and thanks for watching the replay. We are going to be reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. It's 150 pages, so we're going to try to do about 50 pages a day. We're just going to see. I'm just going to get it started. People going to have to get in where they fit in. Hello. Okay. So we're reading off the phone today. I'm going to do the synopsis and I'm going to get started. And then in the following videos, I'll try to do a recap at the beginning. So this is actually... I think this is actually the third book in the series. The first book was called The Deadbeat, and the second book was called The Student. The Student was crazy. Hey Shayna, you have made it to the beginning of a reading live. I started a little bit late, so I'm sorry. I wasn't gonna come on because I was like, it wasn't downloaded on my phone. But we're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. Every book in the Red series is a standalone, but each title starts with like the bridesmaid, the teacher, the trainer, etc. So the name of the book is called The Patient. I'm going to read the synopsis and we're going to get started. A morbid, chilling, that's a review. After a rough upbringing, Nina thought that she was destined to be one of the have-nots, until a surprising turn of events catapulted her into everything she ever wanted. The best days of her life, however, quickly turned into the worst experience she's ever faced. Diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, Nina is told she has less than 6 months to live. Her health is failing rapidly and time is still running out. Nina is doing everything she can to survive. But what if her demise is the goal? What if sickness isn't her only problem and there's a killer in her midst? Dun 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 dun. A pulse-pounding drama full of twists and turns. This series is fast-paced, straight to the point, and packs a powerful punch that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Let's get started. The Patient, a psychological thriller by Tanisha Stewart. So there's 25 chapters in an epilogue. Chapter 1. Dr. Black stood before me, a black-haired white man in his early 30s, wearing a white lab coat, stethoscope around his neck, black dress pants, and black Crocs with black socks. He stared at the papers on his clipboard for a long time before he tore his eyes from the test results and looked back at me. Nina, I'm sorry. As soon as he said those words, my face fell and the ounce of hope I was holding on to evaporated. I swallowed, not wanting to say these exact words, but at the same time, I had to. I needed to prepare. My vision blurred as I looked back onto his eyes, and for a second, I saw a glimmer of something in them. What was it? Apprehension? Nerves? Why would he be nervous? He wasn't the one bearing the weight of the bad news. I was. Once his appointment was over, he would go back to his happy little life. I was the one who would suffer. Hey, Rocio, how long do I have? Silence fell between us, to the point where I thought that I only imagined asking the question, then he finally broke it in my heart. 6 months, if you're being optimistic. If we're optimistic? What the H was that supposed to mean? I sputtered my next words as another dizzy spell hit me. Dr. Black, what do you mean, if we're being optimistic? Are you saying it could be less than 6 months? His lips formed a thin straight line. I'm afraid that could be considerably shorter. When he said that, the same look I saw before crossed his eyes, this time with what appeared to be an involuntary crick of the neck. What did he seem so unsettled? I was the one with cancer, not him. Dr. Black, Nina, I'm afraid we'll have to cut this appointment short. I have other patients waiting. My mind reeled. What? Everything in the room spun for a few seconds. I can't leave now. I still have questions. Desperation laced my tone, and I knew it had to have seeped into my facial expression too, but Dr. Black was unmoved. He startled me when he reached out to pull me off the table as if he was about to rush me out the door. I wrenched away, standing on my own 2 feet. Hey, get your hands off of me. A weak spell hit me in the moment, and I almost toppled to the floor, but I held on to the edge of the bed for support. The thin paper crinkled as I straightened, taking deep breaths until the spell was over. Dr. Black held a hint of sympathy in his eyes as I went through my spell, but the moment is over. His formidable expression returned. Nina, you need to go. Well, dang. He said those words with such force it scared me. Chills went down my spine and I didn't understand. In fact, I hadn't understood for a while. Everything happened so fast. One second I was facing the best chapter of my life. The next I was knocking on heaven's door. I didn't give Dr. Black the chance to push me again. Mustering up the strength, I shuffled out of his office as fast as I could, not looking back as I walked. With each step I took away from that room, gloom filled my chest. Was this it? How my life was going to end? A tear rolled down my cheek in the thought that my life had barely begun. I was 27, just finding my stride. I hadn't had the chance to get married yet or even have children. It wasn't fair. Before I knew it, my fingers were finding my mom's name in the contacts, but I hesitated. I shook my head. No. Rick said I shouldn't. The painful memory began to resurface, but I pushed it away. I would call my best friend Jamaica instead. Next scene. As soon as Nina exited the office, Dr. Black let out a deep breath he had been holding and slid to the floor. Pulling out the burner phone, his shaky fingers dialed the single contact. The moment his voice came into the other line, he said, "It's done." "Good," the voice replied. "That wasn't so difficult, was it, Doc?" Rage and fear intertwined with Dr. Black's chest, causing his face to redden and breathed into labor. That was it, he forced out. No more. My career is on the line, and the voice spoke in a clipped tone, cutting him off. Your career was over 5 years ago. Today is just a reckoning. You will do as I say, when and how I say it. Understood? And remember, your freedom also depends on this job, so you better play your part well. Before Dr. Black could utter another word, the line went dead. He stared across the room till his eyes blurred. What had he gotten himself into? If you're just joining, we're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. Chapter 2. I took several deep breaths before pulling out my phone to call Jamaica. The sky was sunny and bright as I walked into the hospital parking lot. Such a sharp contrast to the storm that was brewing within me. Yes, we got a new book. A honk sounded in the distance, and I looked left and right to see which direction it was coming from before zeroing back on my phone. Standing aside my car on shaky limbs, I found Jamaica's name in my contacts and pressed the call icon. It rang several times before she answered. Hello? Tiny voices could be heard on the other end beside Jamaica. Forms of the sounds of it, one of the kids was whining because he wanted to be on the phone, while another squealed and the other was yelling. Hey girl, I swallowed back my emotions and fought to keep a steady tone. Did I catch you at a bad time? Jordan, stop that, Jamaica hollered and then focused on me. No, girl, I'm good. These kids are driving me crazy, but nothing new. What's up with you? Did you go to the doctor? Yes, my voice was so small it was almost non-existent. Jamaica immediately picked up that something was wrong. What happened? She asked, her tone apprehensive. I sighed. He says I might not have much time left. My eyes blurred as Jamaica hollered in my ear. What? Cries could be heard in the background from all three of her children and my friends upset. Hold on, girl. Kevin. Jamaica called out to her husband. Kevin, come here, please. My heart deflated as I thought about the fact that my best friend couldn't give me her undivided attention. She was always distracted by her husband and kids. Normally, I wouldn't have minded. I would have even entertained by the tiny voices demanding her attention and her husband Kevin's deep baritone voice yelling in the background for them to settle down. But not today. Right now, I needed my friend. I stared up at the sky. What did I ever do to deserve all that I had gone through in life? I already had a crappy childhood. My adulthood was only slightly better because I was the one in control, not some random foster parents or drug-addicted mother. Then, when I received an unexpected blessing, my heart swelled with joy, only for the shred of happiness to be snatched away in a matter of months. The sound on Jamaica's end of the phone became muffled as she had a brief conversation with her husband. Then I heard movement as if Jamaica was walking through the house. When the surroundings grew quiet, I knew Jamaica must have stepped outside. I'm on my porch, Jamaica said, as if hearing my thoughts. The doctor said what? I didn't want to say it again, especially since I was frustrated that she wasn't able to pay full attention to me when I first started talking, but it wasn't like me avoiding my problems with reverse reality. He said 6 months would be optimistic. Silence fell between us. Dang, Nina, Jamaica said, her tone heavy with emotion. What does he mean, if we're optimistic? Is there anything he can do? Any treatments? I swallowed again. He mentioned chemo, but with the way that it's been progressing, there's not much hope. Dang, Jamaica repeated. What about second opinions? Is there anyone else who can? Both Rick and Dr. Black had already told me that every other doctor would probably say the same thing. He said there's no point in wasting time and money when the chemo might work now. When the chemo might work now. I don't have time to waste. Jamaica was silent again, and I knew what she was thinking. She was seeing the picture as clearly as I was, that there was no hope for me and that this might be one of our final conversations. I'm so sorry, Nina. I sniffled. Me too. Next scene. When I got home, I sat and stared blankly at the television screen for an infinite amount of time. The sun lowered on the horizon, and soon Ricky's car would be heard pulling into my brand new driveway. A bitter chuckle escaped my lips as I rolled my eyes at the thought. The brand new driveway led to a house that I wouldn't get to enjoy much longer. I had been my dream to own my own home, but it seemed that as soon as things turned around for me, I was struck with illness. Life wasn't fair. Rick's keys jiggled behind the door. Then I heard the knob turning as he walked in. We caught eyes. I stared at him, and he studied me with concern. Hey, how'd it go with Dr. Black? Let me find out Rick is the one. Let me be quiet. It's a quick book. It gotta be Rick. What if it's Nina? You know what? I do this all the time. I sighed. You mean he didn't tell you? Rick shook his head as he slid off his shoes and set his briefcase down by the door, then walked over to give me a hug and a kiss. I didn't get a chance to speak with him. I called several times, but every time I did, I reached his voicemail. I let out another bitter chuckle. Yeah, he did say that he was busy, practically pushing me out of the office. Rick's brows furrowed. Push you out? What do you mean? My ears grew hot. Nothing. I don't want to get into it right now. Rick stood silent as he continued to study me. What were the results? I didn't want to say it. The more that I shared the results out loud, the realer they seemed to become. I knew I was being superstitious, but this gloomy thought process consumed me. Like the more I said it, the shorter my days would become. But Rick had been there with me every step of the way, ever since we found out I had cancer. I couldn't leave him hanging. 6 months. I let out, my expression etched in stone. Rick's heart broke before my eyes. Oh, baby. He rushed over to hold me. Is he sure? He brushed my shoulder length wavy hair over my shoulder and poured into my eyes. I nodded, breaking our gaze. Who knew that we had many more conversations I would have with Rick? My neck tightened with heavy emotions, but I fought that to keep a brave face and tough exterior. This sickness would not break me. I refused to crumble before I died, no matter how short of a time I had left. Rick cut into my thoughts. And you said he forced you from his office? I nodded. His face contorted into a mask of anger. I shook my head to calm him down. Let it go. There's no use to arguing with my doctor. It's not like I'm going to change anything. Nick, Rick began, assessing me with his eyes. If Dr. Black isn't treating you right, we can. I held a hand up to stop him. I'm fine, baby. I just need another one of your back rubs, if it wouldn't be too much to ask. Rick still seemed upset at first, but after a few moments his expression morphed into a forced grin. I knew he was only forcing his smile for me, and it made me feel like crap. How many more forced smiles and looks of sympathy would I have to endure before my final days? Too much to ask, he said. Nothing's too much for you. Let me get the oil. Rick exited the living room to my powder room, and as soon as he was out of sight, I let out a depressed sigh. Hiding my true emotions was becoming harder every day. But what other choice did I have? I didn't want to make everyone around me miserable just because I was miserable. My eyes scanned my vast living room full of expensive paintings and high-class decor. I never knew half the stuff was before I bought this house. It came fully furnished, and I paid cash with some of the windfall out of one. When I bought the house, I was so excited about having a powder room because then I would get to be rich bougie. I would get to be the rich bougie auntie to Jamaica's kid until I had my own. Now, I would never have my own family. Rick was all I had, especially since me and my mother's falling out. Her face flashed across my mind for the second time that day, and I wanted to call her, but couldn't. She had done too much, gone too far this time, especially with everything I was dealing with. How dare she? Anger reignited within me as I thought about what caused our split, but I didn't allow myself to get too worked up. I needed my energy. Rick returned to the room with a cup of tea and the massage oil. Did you want me to massage in here or massage bed in the den? He asked. I looked up at him. Here, if you don't mind. He shrugged. Whatever you want is fine with me. Lay down. I obliged. Rick gave killer massages, and after that day I needed one, along with my dizzy and fainting spells. Also suffered from weakness in my body, shortness of breath, and back and muscle spasms. Cancer was taking me through the ringer. Rick eased the back of my shirt up, and his breath caught in his throat. What is it? I asked, craning my neck to face him. You got a new bruise, he said in a low tone. I didn't respond. That was another thing that had been happening lately. I didn't know how it happened. One minute I was on top of the world, and the next my body rejected me and decided it was time to die. Rick began the massage, ensuring he was gentle so that he wouldn't aggravate the bruise. A few minutes into it, he said, "Have you thought about the chemo Dr. Black mentioned? I think this is beginning to start now to get the ball rolling. We want to get ahead of this if we can." I love how Rick never made me feel like my problems were solely up to me, no matter how much I tried to hide my emotions from everyone. If I hurt, we hurt. If I had an issue, we had an issue. He'd been there with me every step of the way since my illness began and hadn't missed a day. My eyes clouded as I thought about all the chemo would entail, including losing my hair and feeling even more nauseous than I have been lately. But if I had a chance to survive, I'll try it, I finally said. Rick sighed in belief. Thank God. Babe, we're going to get through this. You hear me? I sure hope so. If you're just joining, we're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. Chapter 3. When Nina was fast asleep after drinking her latest drug-infused cocktail, Rick grabbed her cell phone from the end table and conducted his nightly routine of checking her text messages, call logs, and emails. He exhaled when he realized that everything was still on schedule and Nina still didn't suspect a thing. He looked down at her with pity. Poor thing, all she wanted was love and happiness. Unfortunately, life didn't always turn out the way for everyone. He would be her knight in shining armor for the next few months. Then, when it was time, Nina would be gone and Rick would get to enjoy the life that she would never truly appreciate with her rough upbringing. Nina had grown up with a drug-addicted single mother while Rick's parents spoiled him and his older siblings in their upper-middle-class neighborhood. When he grew up to become an oncologist, his parents were proud, until the stupid WHORE ruined everything for him and left his life in shambles. If she hadn't run her big mouth, he'd still have his job, and Nina wouldn't have to suffer like this. Nina stirred, and Rick straightened stiff as a board, hoping she didn't open her eyes to see him standing there with her cell phone. If she did wake up and started asking questions, he would have to escalate his plan and things could get messy. Rick had been accustomed to the finer things in life. He was hanging by a thread ever since he lost his esteemed position at the previous hospital he worked at with Dr. Black. Edgar Black got away before the heat fell on him, while Rick was still swept up in excitement over the thousands of extra dollars they were making. Rick hadn't gotten caught at their scheme, but he did get caught sleeping with one of his patients. That had been his downfall, and he thought his life was over. His parents cut him off financially, and he was forced to find another job. No one else would hire him as an oncologist, so he settled for a lowly case manager position. He oversaw a bunch of doctors and patients at the hospital and worked closely with the staff that would have been his peers if he held the same position, but it wasn't the same. Rick could see their upturned noses from a mile away. They thought that they were better than him when he could run circles around any of them back in his heyday. But that was neither here nor there. That was neither here nor there. It was time for Rick's favorite part of the evening, checking Nina's bank account. He hummed methodically as he entered her username and passcode. Then, when he was granted access, his eyeballs bulged at the amount left in the account. With the frugal spending plan he suggested, by the time she was dead, he would still have a cool $4 million to spare. That would be plenty to start him over, plus whatever her life insurance policy got him. If the paperwork went through, he had one of his old buddies working on that. If everything went well, the policy would give him another $1 million. And he didn't have to share a dime with anyone since Nina had no children and was estranged from her only living relative, her mother. Nina would likely try to leave something to her best friend Jamaica and her 3 little brats, but not if Rick had anything to do with it. He would sweet talk her, work a little magic here and there, and undo the precious bond Nina had with her best friend, just like he had ruined the fragile relationship between Nina and her mother. And the best part about it was that no one would ever know. Rick hummed a melody from one of his favorite songs as he watched Nina sleep for a few more moments. Then he went back into character, bending and gently lifting her body into his strong, muscular arms. He carried her to the bedroom, pulled the covers up around her, and set her phone down on the nightstand next to her bed. Rick was always careful to lay it on thick when it came to Nina. He played the caring and compassionate boyfriend role to a T, running her bubble baths, giving her massages, and listening to her whine and lament about her checkered past with her mother. His act was so convincing that he almost convinced himself. Rick was dang good at what he did. Maybe he should have gone into acting. He allowed himself to ponder that thought for a moment before he went to take his nightly shower. As the steam rose around him and he lathered his body with the micellar body wash Nina gifted him a week ago, Rick's lips formed a genuine smile. Pretty soon, his fortune would be secure and his life would be complete. When he finished the shower, he dried himself off with one of the huge towels Nina had stored in the bathroom closet. Then was careful to ensure all of his dirty clothes, the towel, and the washcloths were placed in the hamper. He made it a point to be neat and meticulous to present the image that he was making his dying girlfriend life easier by being considerate in every way. As he tidied up the bathroom, Rick traveled down memory lane to the time that he met Nina, which wasn't so long ago. Nina wasn't hard to win over Rick once Rick found her. Down on his luck and destitute from being fired, he was at his wits' end. He initially followed his former colleague Edgar Black out to Massachusetts in hopes that his old friend would put in a good word for him, but Dr. Black acted like he was too busy to answer his calls. It infuriated Rick because of all the money they had previously made together. The way Rick saw it, he and Edgar would have been in the same boat if Edgar had gotten caught like Rick did. Of course, Edgar would have faced much more serious consequences, but still, they were two peas in a pod. Now Edgar was trying to act brand new, like he never associated himself with the dark side of medicine. Effing kiss A, Rick said, bitter at the memory. Edgar Black's gloating season hadn't lasted long because Rick found another way to scheme, except this one wouldn't involve any potential malpractice lawsuits, at least not one on his end. The idea dawned that Rick was up one night in his motel, drinking a beer and watching the nightly news. He carried the same routine for a month until he noticed several big-ticket lottery winners had come from his city. On a whim, he grabbed his laptop and did a little search, and that was when he saw Nina. Her smiling photo holding the huge $8 million check in her hands. A quick social media search showed that she was single and had no children in her photos. She was also looking for a man. Judging from the dating site profiles Rick found her on, he created a few fake accounts to feel her out, flirting with her and using different photos and personalities with each one until Nina seemed to take a liking to one of them, Adam. Adam flirted with Nina for weeks, and Rick could see that she was smart to see a future with him. He went in for the kill. Adam asked Nina out on a date, promised to take her somewhere real nice. That night, the night of the date, Nina showed up all dressed and ready, but Adam was nowhere to be found. Okay, we got to talk about how this man was literally plotting on her. Rick, however, just happened to be at the same restaurant waiting for a date who stood him up too. He played up his disappointment to Nina as they waited in the restaurant's waiting area, and she fell right into his arms. It turns out Nina liked Rick even better than Adam, especially when Adam messaged her the next morning and apologized for ditching her, but came clean about his wife and children. Rick called Nina later that morning to ask her out on another date, and of course she agreed. He made it worth her while. One thing led to another, and here they were. Phase 1 of the plan was to get her hooked on his love and affection. Phase 2 was to get her sick and introduce her to Dr. Black. Now time for Phase 3, Rick said with a sinister smile. Did it say to get her sick? If you're just joining, we're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. Chapter 4. I was a bundle of nerves as I waited in my hospital room for my first round of chemo. Both Rick and Dr. Black had told me what to expect, and Rick promised to be there with me through the whole ordeal, but I wanted my mom. I couldn't explain it. Maybe it was fragmented memories, or maybe we still had a bond despite what she had done to me, but I felt like I needed to see her face, hear her voice, or she could give me a hug and tell me everything was going to be okay. Mom had been calling my phone left and right since our falling out, but I hadn't answered. I hadn't wanted to talk to her because I didn't believe she deserved my time, but now all of those thoughts evaporated. When Rick stepped out to use the bathroom, I grabbed my phone, a tear sliding down my cheek. She answered on the first ring. Nina? Okay, I'm getting hot. I was cold at first. I was quiet for a moment, then I said, Hey, Mom. Honey, hi. I've been trying to call you. I swallowed. I know. Listen, are you busy right now? Busy? No, why? Can you come to the hospital? Her voice rose an octave. The hospital? Why are you at the hospital? Did something new happen? I shook my head, though she couldn't see me. No, nothing new. I started chemo. I need some support. Mom's voice lowered. Honey, of course I'll be there. I'm on my way. I gave her the address and hung up the phone. Then I put my phone on the tiny table next to my bed. The chemo was supposed to start in 30 minutes, and Mom lived 15 minutes from the hospital. Knowing her, she was probably already in her car on the way. That was one of my mom's good qualities, besides her many flaws. I could count on her being there in my time of need just as much as I could count on her stabbing me in the back. The door opened and Rick reappeared with a smile. Hey, babe, how are you feeling? You ready? I looked down on my hands. Not really. Nina, he soothed, it's going to be okay. But I know what Dr. Black said, but patients pull through with chemo every day. There are countless stories of people who have had a breakthrough. The thing about it, this reminded me of the movie Enough. Who was in that? A lot of these books sometimes do, so a lot of these movies sometimes do roughly be about books. Hold on, let me see. Oh, Jennifer Lopez. Okay, I can get some of the. Now I want to watch it. um, I'm glad she didn't tell. Well, she hasn't said it yet, but I'm glad she didn't tell him that her mom was coming because he probably would have found a way to be like, "Why is she coming?" Like, I really want to know what he did to make her hate her mom. He pissed me off. Just know that. It sounded like a good movie. Well, it looked like looked like a good movie too. Did you do? Hey, B, is it B app? We're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. I know what Dr. Black said, but patients pull through with chemo every day. There are countless stories of people who have had a breakthrough that the doctors weren't expecting because they started treatment before things got too bad. I wanted to open my mouth to counter Rick's claim, but I didn't. He knew more about this stuff than me since he worked with doctors every day. Rick was the one who referred me to Dr. Black. How convenient. When I first started having symptoms, he said that he was one of the best. I clasped my hands and squeezed my fingers. The sooner we got this over with, the better. As I suspected, Mom arrived at the hospital 10 minutes before the chemo was set to start. When she entered the room, I became full with mixed emotions. Part of me was relieved to see her because every little girl wanted her mommy, but another part twisted with anger, disappointment, and guilt because our relationship was so complicated. Many times I had trusted my mother just for her to let me down. Many times she had apologized just to do better for a little while, then succumb back to her old ways. Because of her, I never had a real childhood, and because of her, I never quite felt worthy as an adult. Pam! Rick's eyes widened with surprise when he saw her. What are you doing here? His green eyes flitted towards me, but I didn't offer an explanation. I just hoped Rick and Mom didn't get into one of their arguments. They never liked each other. Ironically, because Mom thought Rick wasn't good for me, she never expounded on why, but I found it quite ironic that she would have the nerve to think that she had a say so about anything I did in my life when she had destroyed so much of it by the way she raised me. Mom gave Rick a cool glance before focusing on me. I'm here to support my daughter. Rick opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but decided against it and turned away, then settled into a seat in the corner of the room, while Mom took the seat next to me, which he had previously been sitting in before she came in the room. I studied Rick as he looked down at the floor, his forearms resting on his knees, hands clasped together in a praying position. A small smile played on the corners of my lips. If I could say one thing, it would be that my boyfriend was fine. Rick was tall, light-skinned, with green eyes and neatly shaven hair. Michael Ealy. He had a slim built frame from running track in high school and college, and he often worked out at a gym. When we first met, I was surprised a man so good looking was interested in me. Not that I thought that I was horrible looking with my caramel skin tone, shoulder length, wavy hair, and slightly chunky frame. I was going to say Sanaya Lathan till she said chunky frame, so I don't know. But I usually appeal to nerds. My cousin, I like Michael Ealy too till he dropped them kids in Color Purple. Not Color Purple, for Color Girls. Can't get over it. And I think he was like a stalker in another movie too. Like, I like Barbershop Michael Ealy, like when he was just coming onto the scene. um um I usually appeal to nerds, not men who look like they should be on the cover of a magazine. When he approached me one night after I was stood up on the first date, I was shocked to learn that he had been stood up too. At first, I thought he was just making conversation, but then he asked if I wanted to have dinner with him since we both showed up at the restaurant. Child, fine, fine. Sure, I guess, I had said, uneasy in my response. I mean, no point in wasting an outfit, right? I gestured towards my little black dress and pumps. My feet were killing me because I had flat feet and only wore heels for special occasions. Rick gave me a winning smile and stood, reaching out to grab my arm. I stood too, blushing as he led me to the hostess and she seated us. We surprisingly had a great time getting to know each other. By the end of the impromptu dinner, however, I still wasn't convinced that Rick was actually into me. I thought he suggested a meal since we both wasted our time showing up for our dates, but then he asked for my number. Then he called for another date the next day. Life was a whirlwind after that, and I enjoyed every moment with a man who proved to be just as kind, compassionate, and caring as he was good looking. I caught Mom eyeing Rick from the corner of my eye. I turned my head to see her suck her teeth in disgust, then stared at one of the huge posters in the hospital room. How rude. She didn't bother to hide her disdain for Rick. Though part of me understood why she didn't like him, Rick was the one who alerted me to the fact that my mom had betrayed me. I could hardly forget the day since it only happened a month ago. My celebrity crush was Shamar Moore, but he's kind of giving. I'm glad I read the rest of that silently. I had a little thing for Shamar. But then he played that character in Diary of a Mad Black Woman. She gave when Tyler Perry gave him them braids. Why you get him them too big for his face braids? But yeah, you just never know, honestly. I could hardly forget that day since it only happened a month ago. Next scene. I had just found out about the cancer diagnosis and my mind and body had gone completely numb. Mom had been with me at the appointment when Dr. Black shared the news. She freaked out and asked a million questions. When I fell mute, she and Dr. Black discussed treatment options while my ears barely registered their words. My entire world was falling apart when I just started to turn around. Mom brought me home and Rick was due to arrive at any moment. She sat me down on the sofa in the living room and raced to the kitchen to grab me a bowl of cookie dough ice cream and whipped cream, one of my favorite comfort treats. Mom rushed to my side after fixing the bowl, her eyes brimming with tears. Nina, honey, I'm here. She reached for my hand and squeezed it, but I barely felt it. Rick arrived some time later. I had forced myself to eat the ice cream at my mom's request. Then at some point, I dozed off from the exhaustion of the news. When I woke up, Mom was no longer in the living room, but Rick was home. Hey, baby, how are you doing? Dr. Black told me the news. I couldn't answer him. Instead, I burst into tears. At that moment, Mom reappeared in the living room, stopping short when she saw Rick. What are you doing here? She asked in a suspicious tone. Rick opened his mouth to answer, but I couldn't. He's been staying here with me, Mom. I need all the support I can get. Mom stared between me and Rick. I could have stayed with you, Nina. I felt myself getting worked up, but Rick cleared his throat. I'll give you two a moment. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. Once he was gone, Mom's expression returned to normal. She sat down beside me and squeezed my hand. How are you feeling? Are you scared? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Despite everything, her presence was comforting. It's okay to be scared, she said softly, but you're strong, Nina. You always have been. We sat in silence for a while, both of our minds likely on my diagnosis. Then I excused myself to use the bathroom. I needed a moment to breathe away from my mother and Rick. When I returned, Rick was back, sitting on the couch with a concerned look on his face. Mom had brought my dirty ice cream bowl and spoon to the kitchen to wash them. Nina, your phone buzzed while you were gone. It looked important. Frowning, I checked my phone. My eyes widened as I saw a notification from my bank account, an online order for $1,000 sofa. What the heck? I muttered, my hand shaking. Rick leaned over. What's wrong? Someone used my card to buy a sofa, $1,000. Mom re-entered the living room after hearing our conversation, looking worried. Someone used your card? How? Rick suggests call the company. Nina, maybe it's a mistake. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. As the customer service representative confirmed the details, my blood ran cold. The sofa was being delivered to my mother's apartment. They also have her name, phone number, and email address on file for contact. I hung up, my vision blurring with angry tears. Mom, how could you? She looked bewildered. What, Nina? What are you talking about? The sofa, I screamed, my composure shattering. You used my card to buy $1,000 sofa and had it sent to your apartment? Mom's face paled. Nina, I swear I didn't. This was the last straw. I can't forgive that bad word. um, what's up, Seattle? Wrong person. I'm not from or do I stay in Seattle ever. Um, this is the last straw, Mom. I cut her off, my voice breaking. I trusted you and let you back into my life for the last time. You stealing from me as a child was bad enough, not to mention losing me to foster care only to get me back and use drugs again. But what you're not about to do is steal from me while I have cancer. Mom stepped towards me, her hands outstretched. Nina, please, I swear, I knew nothing about this. I would never. Get out. I whispered, then louder, get out. Rick moved to stand between us. You heard her, Pam. I think it's best for you to leave. So within a matter of minutes, this man grabbed her mom's phone and set up an appointment to get a couch sent to her house. And then, oh, I didn't watch none of the power. I don't know what Power Book is. I didn't watch that. Um, Child. do 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 do. Mom's face crumpled, but she backed away. At the door, she turned. Nina, I love you. I didn't do this. Please believe me. As the door closed behind her, my legs gave out. Rick caught me, lowering us both to the floor as I dissolved into sobs. Shh, it's okay, he murmured, stroking my hair. I'm here. You don't need her. You have me. Ain't that like a dude to like try to make you like pin you against your family, move you away? I'm the only person you need. You can rely on me. Next scene. Coming back to the presence from my memory, I saw that Rick was tense. He was staring at my mom, looking like he wanted to say something, probably because of the way she sucked her teeth at him. Before Mom and Rick could get into a new argument, a knock sounded on the door, and a nurse walked in. Nina, it's time for your treatment. I looked up at Rick, tears gripping in me anew. He helped me to my feet, his arm strong around my waist. You can do this, Nina, he said firmly. I'll be right here with you, every step of the way. Taking a deep breath, I nodded. I'm here too, Mom said, fixing Rick with a steely gaze. I didn't acknowledge her words because I didn't have time for the drama. My life was hanging in the balance as it was. Gaslighting. You did a review of Carmelo's Tacos. Yeah, it was in Seattle. Okay. If you're just joining, we're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. We're on chapter 5. When the chemo was finished, I was exhausted. This was supposed to be helping me, but unfortunately, the weakness and pain only got worse. I had already thrown up once directly after the treatment, despite being given anti-nausea medications. I want to push pause and tell you that this lady don't have cancer, and they up there giving her chemo for something she don't have. Now, however he made her sick, I don't think you could give somebody cancer unless they got something new going on. But I can't wait to find out what's gonna happen. Um, what's wrong with my body? Why wouldn't it accept the treatment so that I can get better? Of course, Rick assured me that nausea could still be a side effect despite the preventive medications I had taken. But I just wanted to be over. I wanted to see a silver lining despite my despair. Mom leaned in, her breath furrowed with concern. How are you feeling, honey? Are you in pain? Do you need anything? I shook my head weakly, overwhelmed by her rapid fire questions. She hesitated and then said, You know, I've been thinking, why don't you come stay with me while you recover? Or I could come stay at your house for a few weeks. I could take care of you just like when you were little. Her offer caught me off guard for more reasons than one. Still, I kept a calm demeanor as I answered, not wanting to hurt her feelings. Oh, thanks, Mom, but it's not necessary. Rick lives with me now, so he'll be there. Mom's face fell, her lips tightened. Nina, are you sure that that's the right decision? How well do you know this man? Anger flared in my chest. My eyes shot to Rick, who looked just as offended as I felt after her talking about him like he wasn't right here in the room with us. Mom, Rick has been here with me every step of the way since I got sick. I was going to stop there, but in my anger, I couldn't help but to add, which is much more than I could say for you. I would have been there for you if you answered my call, she retorted. Why do you keep shutting me out? I only want to be there for you. I laughed bitterly. Do you want to be there for me or steal something else from me? I didn't steal. How's the sofa, Mom? I cut her off, my voice ice cold. For the last time, that wasn't me, Mom protested. Rick stepped between us, his voice calm but firm. Pam, I understand you want to help your daughter, but picking fights with her isn't the way. She needs to rest up and heal. You don't want her to stress out any more than she already has. Mom stared at Rick for a long moment, her eyes narrowed. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could tell that she was biting back a scathing retort. Finally, she turned away without another word. When the post chemo waiting session was over and it was time for me to leave, Mom went one way to her car while Rick and I went another way to his car. The ride home was quiet, my exhaustion settling over me like a heavy blanket. As Rick helped me into the house, he broke the silence. I don't like how your mother badgered you back there, he announced. I sighed. I know. Are you sure it's a good idea for her to come to your treatment? I frowned. Why do you say that? Rick placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Because that scene just caused. It's not good for you, Nina. I want to help you get better, not see you get worse. I mulled over his words, torn between agreeing and defending my mom. I don't know, Rick. She's still my mother. I get that, but just cool it, okay? I snapped, immediately regretting my harsh tone. Rick's face fell, but I was too drained to comfort him. I shuffled towards the bedroom, leaving him standing in the living room, his worried gaze following me as I retreated. I wasn't trying to be rude to my boyfriend, just like I wasn't trying to reject my mom. Despite what she had done to me, I just wanted both of them to stop fighting with each other and focus on supporting me. As I sat on my bed and reflected on the chemo session, I became more and more conflicted. Why were my emotions so scrambled when it came to my mom? Why couldn't I just keep her around or let her go for good? For the life of me, I could never pick a side and stick with it. I guess it made sense since she was my mother and she wasn't all bad. Her betrayals cut deep, but so did the love that she showed me throughout the years. The same mom who stole my Christmas parents to sell them for drugs was the one who made sure that I had everything I wanted for my next birthday. The same mom who neglected me until I was taken away and put into foster care, went to my school with Vaseline all over her face and her hair tied back to fight some bullies who wouldn't stop messing with me. The same mother who charged $1,000 sofa to my name after I was diagnosed with cancer was sitting with me as I endured chemo. Our relationship was so complicated, I couldn't even try to understand it. Next scene. Nina was slipping from Rick's grasp. He felt it. Her mother Pam was inching her way back into her daughter's affections, which meant he had a surefire plan of tearing them apart for good hadn't worked. Rick was beyond shocked when Pam showed up to the chemo session. He had to find a way to get rid of her. He couldn't use Nina's debit card again since the trick had failed. There had to be another way, because sooner or later Pam would ask the right question, and Nina would begin to grow suspicious of him. He was tired of playing it cordial with the old bride. It was time to turn up the heat. Chapter 6. Pam was tossing and turning as she tried to fall asleep, but she couldn't. Something wasn't right, and Nina's boyfriend but Pam couldn't put her finger on what it was. Who the heck did he think he was, waltzing into her daughter's life and calling shots like he was some kind of boss? The worst part was that Nina seemed to trust him more than she trusted her own mother. Pam could admit that she made mistakes in her life, but she never intentionally caused Nina harm. She'd been sick, and drugs had taken over her life. Pam went through a depressive phase after losing her own mother when Nina was 18 months old. Pam's mother, Robin, was the only support Pam had since Nina's father left as soon as she told him she was pregnant. The pain from his departure cut deep because Pam was head over heels in love with the man, but he obviously didn't feel the same for her. Pam thought that she could make it with her mother's assistance until a tragic car accident snatched her away. Because of the suddenness of her mother's death, Pam's mental health spiraled. The doctors originally thought that she might have late onset postpartum depression, but her job didn't want to give her any time off since her daughter was already over a year old. Pam tried her best to cope with the pain until she couldn't take it anymore. She hooked up with a guy from the neighborhood who she knew sold Percocets. She promised herself that it would only be for a little while. She was able to manage dealing with the loss of her mother. Pam took extra precautions by ensuring she only took the Percocets at night when Nina was sleeping. No matter how badly she wanted them during the day, they lasted for a little while until her needs became stronger. Then she started taking them at night, then again in early morning, reasoning that they would wear off by the time her daughter was awake. I know, right? Before she knew it, Pam was out of control. She didn't realize how deep she was in her addiction until Nina was taken from her. A neighbor called Child Protective Services and said that Pam demonstrated erratic behavior and that she was neglecting her daughter. When she was tested, they found the Percocets in her system with no prescription. Pam fought tooth and nail to get her daughter back, and she did. But then the depression came back when she thought about how much time she lost with her baby while she was gone. Pam battled depression and thoughts of being a terrible mother until she found herself addicted again. This time she used various other drugs, ones that made her do irrational things, like stealing from her own daughter. Pam was ashamed of that time in her life, but she had been clean for a number of years. Why would Nina believe she would steal from her now? Couldn't her daughter see that she changed? Pam was drifting off to sleep when she heard a thump down the hallway. She gasped, clutching her covers as soft footsteps sounded towards her bedroom. Pam's heart raced and she looked around wildly for something to use as a weapon, but before she could find anything, her bedroom door creaked open. Pam screamed as a shadowy figure appeared in her doorway, but her cries were silenced by the sight of a gun. The man wore all black, including a black hat and a black gloved hands that held the gun as he stood at the foot of her bed wearing an eerie smile. Pam didn't recognize the man. He crept towards her with the gun, and she scrambled up to a sitting position. Beads of perspiration spanning her forehead. Please don't kill me, she pleaded, but the man continued to smile before speaking. I'm not here to kill you, Pammy, just to help you take the edge off. Pam didn't know what the man was talking about or how he knew her name, but when he produced a pill bottle, she immediately knew who sent him. As if confirming her suspicions, the man spoke up. A mutual friend of ours says he's trying to give you the easy way out, but you left him no choice. Now you're going to be quiet for good. That low down dirty bee, Rick was trying to unalive her. Pam knew something was off about that man, but she never thought that he would do something this grimy. Pam swallowed and stared at the bottle. Then the man, I'm not taking those pills. You will if you want your daughter to recognize you at your funeral. Thank you, Ren. Pam tried desperately to think of a plan, anything that would alert the police or lead someone to her apartment to help her, but there was nothing she could do. Her cell phone was at her nightstand next to her bed. If she reached for it, the man would surely blow her brains out. What's it going to be, Pammy? He taunted. The pills or I shoot you. I'll give you 10 seconds to decide. Come on, she let out. Please don't do this. I'll pay you. I have money. I've already been paid, he said in a cool tone. Please, mister. 10, 9, 8. As the man counted down, Pam knew she had no choice. When he got down to 3, she reached out for the pill bottle. He handed it to her, and she twisted it open. 5 pills were inside. What are these? She asked, looking back up at him. He cocked the gun. Don't worry about that. Just take them. He reached over and grabbed the water bottle Pam kept beside her bed for when she grew thirsty. This will help you swallow. Pam breathed a silent prayer, trying to desperately to think of one more time of something she could do to get away from this man. There was no way. He was standing right in front of her with the gun pointed at her face. He was tall and bulky. There would be no way to fight him off. Pam's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the bottle, then poured its contents in her hand, popped the pills in her mouth, all at once. She twisted the cap of the water bottle and drank it down, tears slipping down her cheeks as she silently pleaded that God would have mercy and that her daughter would forgive her. The man instructed her to open her mouth and lift her tongue when she finished. He used a tiny flashlight to check her mouth to ensure that she had swallowed the pills. Once satisfied the job was done, the man smiled. See? Now that wasn't so bad, was it? Pam was already feeling dizzy. The room was spinning out of control. Good night, Pammy, the man said in a faraway voice, then exited the room. The room was spinning so fast Pam could hardly see. Blood was rushing through her ears, but she willed herself to remain conscious. She reached her arms out for her phone but couldn't find it. Her heart felt like it was about to burst out of her chest. Then suddenly she grew nauseous. Before Pam could make another move, her body jerked and she vomited across the room. Everything she had eaten that day ended up all over her clothes and bed. And then she passed out. Whew. Chapter 7. Dr. Black poured his 7 shot of cognac. His trembling hands betrayed his fraying nerves. He tossed it back, wincing as the liquor initially sweetness gave way to a fiery burn that scorched his throat. The familiar warmth spread through his chest, but it did little to calm his racing heart or silence the cacophony of guilt ridden through written thoughts assaulting his mind. Each swallow of the amber liquid with its tints of oak and spice served as a bitter reminder of how far he'd fallen. He reached for the bottle again, desperate to numb his conscience, and even as the room began to sway around him. He was in his home office, documents splayed across his desk, papers that could prove really harsh. It says another word, but I had to replace it. If they ever saw the court of law, the documents before him showed the reality of Nina's predicament, while the doctor documents at the hospital painted a much more dismal picture. Dr. Black stared at his wall, filled with awards and accolades from his old job as well as his huge certificate of graduations from medical school. Where did it all go wrong? When he left his old job in Pennsylvania, he thought the hospital in Massachusetts would be a fresh start. He was done with the sinister ways, ready to turn over a new leaf and act with new integrity. Never in a million years did he think that his former partner in crime, Dr. Rick Jansen, would be stripped of his license for sleeping with a patient and come looking for him. Now he was caught up in a vicious cycle, destroying the life of an innocent young woman in the process. Why hadn't he just called the police? He knew why. When Rick approached him, he came with receipts. Rick had numerous documents similar to the ones that Dr. Black now had scattered all over his desk. His name and the patients he had lied to. Evidence of the dark deeds that he tried to distance himself from were staring him in the face. Dr. Black was painted into a corner. There was no way out but to go along with Rick's plan and hope he didn't get caught. He couldn't lose his license, much less face fines and imprisonment for all that he had done. He had worked too hard for everything to crumble right when he was reaching his stride. Nina's face flashed across his mind, but he didn't allow himself to dwell on what he was doing to her. Just a few more months, then this nightmare would be over. Rick would go away, Dr. Black would resume his practice, and his conscience would be clear. Anyone would do what he was doing to save their own skin. That was the harsh reality of life. We cared for other people, but when it came down to the wire, it was every man for themselves. If the shoe was on the other foot and Nina was the doctor and Edgar was the patient, she would probably do the same thing to him that he was doing to her. A phone call interrupted his internal debate. Dr. Black thought that it was his regular phone at first, but his heart dropped and face twisted into a grimace when he realized that it wasn't. It was Rick. "Hello," he answered, not bothering to hide his frustration. Rick's clipped tone filled his line. "The dingbat you referred me to didn't finish the job." Chills ran down Dr. Black's spine. "What do you mean, he didn't finish the job? He was supposed to wait until she died. Now that OB slipped into a coma." Dr. Black gasped. "She survived?" Rick answered in an exasperated tone. "Yes, you idiot. Why do you think I'm calling?" Without warning, a vice-like pressure clamped down on Dr. Black's temple, the telltale sign of an impending migraine. "You're telling me she didn't die? That's impossible." "Well, apparently, God provided a miracle," was Rick's sarcastic reply. Dr. Black grew conscious at the weight of his problems. "What do you want me to do? Slip into her room and finish the job?" Dr. Black drew in a sharp breath. "I can't do that. I work on oncology. Rick, they most likely have her in ICU. There's no way I'll be able to get to her undetected." "Then get someone else to do it." The line went dead. Dr. Black's vision blurred as his migraine grew. His breathing labored as his anxiety spiked, causing him to feel like he was losing control. He was deep in trouble with no way out. Something had to give. "He said that Dean bag you referred me to left and she slipped into a coma." Chapter 8. My sneakers squeaked against the immaculate tiles of the hospital floor as I made my way to the intensive care unit with Rick by my side. I had received a call earlier this morning that my mother overdosed on opioids and had slipped into a coma. From what the hospital staff told me, my mom's best friend in the neighborhood, Erlene, went to knock on my mom's door for an early morning walk they had scheduled. When Erlene knocked on the door, she realized it was unlocked, but my mother wasn't answering. When she entered the apartment, Erlene found my mother lying in her bed covered in vomit. There was an empty pill bottle by her side. When the doctors tested her, they found 5 different opioids in her system, like she had taken the pills to try to unalive herself. When I learned the news, my heart plummeted, then a range of emotions ran through me. Currently, the only emotion that consumed me was guilt. Why had she done this? Was it because I told her I didn't want her to stay with me? I had known that my rejection of her offer to help would cause her to spiral like this. My guilty conscience reminded me that I had been avoiding her phone calls for almost a month, only for her to call to support me during chemo, then me reject her again. Rick squeezed my hand as we approached the desk to see what room my mother was in. "It's going to be fine," he said, but the look in his eyes told me another story. It was no secret that Rick and my mother never liked each other. They got off on the wrong foot, and it was only made worse when Rick was the one who discovered she stole from me. I turned to Rick as we waited for the person in front of us to finish talking to the receptionist. "I'm not sure that I can handle much more of this." As I spoke, my emotions continued to swirl within me. Life was already hard with the cancer diagnosis, not to mention that I still didn't feel any better a day after my first chemo session. Instead, I felt worse, and my pain was only magnified by my mother's condition. Rick looked at me and opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closed it. "What?" He shook his head. "No, you're already stressed." What was on his mind? I stared at him expectantly, but he shook his head as if he had made his final decision not to say anything. That only frustrated me because we were already in the middle of a tense moment. Rick moved forward, and I did too. The receptionist asked for my mom's name, and I gave it. She looked at mom's information, then had me and Rick sign the visitors list while she prepared our visitors badges. They were bright red rectangular stickers with our names written on them in black marker. The receptionist peeled the stickers off of their transparent white backing and handed them to me, then to Rick. We stuck them on our shirts so they were clearly visible, then headed towards mom's room. "Child, I don't want that man in my room." Did you? "What were you going to say?" I asked when the receptionist was out of earshot. Rick tensed. "I don't want to get into it, Nina." "I can handle it, Rick. Just say it." He sighed and turned to me. We were a couple of steps away from my mom's room. "It's just that I feel like your mother, she might have..." He trailed off. "What?" I urged. He released a short breath, then said, "I think that she did this for attention." My mouth dropped. Attention? Rick nodded, but he looked as if it was pained him to speak. "I caught the way that she was looking at you all through your chemo session, Nina. It was like that she resented you for not allowing her to take over. Then when you told her that you didn't want her to come stay with you, she practically blew her lid. And then, well, now this." I studied him, processing his words. I hadn't considered looking at my mother's actions as a cry for attention. She had called me every day after our argument, and she did seem upset over the fact that I wouldn't let her stay with me. But to try to unalive herself? I shook my head, and Rick spoke up again. "I knew I shouldn't have said anything." "No, you're fine. It's just I didn't think of it that way, but I'm not sure that was a cry for attention, though." Rick seemed upset that I didn't agree with his reasoning, but he didn't say anything. We entered the room, and my eyes filled with tears as soon as I saw my mother. There were tubes everywhere, with her face was covered with a mask. I was at the moment that it settled in my heart that I didn't want my mother out of my life. I had wrestled with the decision to cut her off so many times, but seeing her like this let me know that my love for her was deeper than any anger or disappointment I felt over our past. If she pulled through, we could find a way through our problems. Maybe we could do family counseling. Maybe we could. Those thoughts halted as I considered another possibility. What if my mother did pull through, but she woke up after I was already dead? One of the doctors had explained to me that she could technically breathe on her own, but because her respiratory system was weakened by the drugs, she needed assistance. I asked him how long she would be in the coma. He said he couldn't determine that. It was up to her body, but it could be days or even weeks. If she didn't wake up, there's a chance that the loss of oxygen to her brain could have caused significant damage, she said. There's a chance your mother won't be able to function on her own. That part scared me the most. If mom woke up before I died and couldn't function, how could I take care of her if I was sick myself? I wasn't supposed to be putting myself under a lot of stress with my illness, but I didn't see how that would be possible with my mom's condition. I turned away, overcome with emotions. Every time I see his name, I just want to punch him in the face. Rick wrapped his arms around me. "This is what I was afraid of. You don't need to be going through this with all you got going on." I felt it, but it was 10 times worse to hear him say it. I looked up at Rick. "What am I going to do?" He looked down at me with soft eyes. "I don't know, babe. There are few different options in a scenario like this, but I can't make any decisions for you. But I'll be here every step of the way, whatever you decide." His words sounded so final, like Rick didn't expect my mom to pull through this. I didn't want to think of that possibility, so I let it go. Walking over, I gently grabbed my mother's hand and squeezed it. Her fingers were soft and warm like I always remember. Was I ready to lose her so soon? It would be a cruel twist of fate to lose my mother right before I lost my own life. A whole family wiped out in one sweep. It wasn't fair. I looked back at Rick, who was studying my mother with a hardened expression. He quickly reset his expression when he saw that I saw him. What was that all about? I want to bet. Oh my goodness. If you're just joining, we're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart. Chapter 9. As Rick and I walked back through the hospital to get to the parking lot, I wrestled with whatever I wanted to confront him about that look he gave my mother. It scared me. Then when he saw that I noticed, he changed his expression. But the look that he gave her was like he despised her. It was much more intense than a simple dislike of a person. Where had that come from? I wanted to say something, but at the same time I didn't want to cause an argument. Rick seemed to notice my silence as we exited the hospital and walked through the parking lot. What's on your mind? I stopped short going for it. Back in the ICU, you gave my mother a look like you hated her. What was that all about? Rick's eyes widened for a second and he opened his mouth, then closed it. He stared at me for a second, then said, What look? I pursed my lips. Rick, you know what I'm talking about. He put his head down and shifted his stance like he had been caught, then looked back up at me with an uneasy expression. Look, I didn't want to say anything, but I was upset with your mother. I processed his words as what he could have said mean by them. Rick and Mom never got along, but their arguments weren't knocked down, drag out fights. They were more petty comments and disagreements. What were you upset with her about? I questioned. Because you thought that she did this for attention? He nodded, but seemed afraid to do so because of my potential reaction. I honestly don't think she did it for attention, and then the way that she treated me at the chemo session was uncalled for, like she wanted to break us up or something. I was upset, but at the same time, I really can't be that upset with her because she didn't know what I was planning. His response threw me for a loop. Huh? What do you mean? She didn't know what you were planning. What were you planning? Rick's shift. Rick's stand shifted again. Nina, I was planning to ask you something today, but with everything going on, he looked around and his voice trailed off. What were you planning, Rick? She shook his head. He shook his head. A car passed by us and headed to an open space. A couple passed by the opposite direction and headed into the hospital. It was a bright, clear, sunny day. Such a sharp contrast to the raging emotion within me. What were you going to ask me? I repeated. He stared at me till his eyes watered, and he blinked back a tear, looking down again. I don't want to do it now because it's not the right time. Not the right time for what? I persisted. Rick, what are you talking about? You're not making sense. Nina, a horn honked in the distance, causing me to startle and look for the source of the sound. It was a car to the left of us, honking at a pedestrian who walked in front of his path. I turned back to Rick, my neck tight with tension. Go ahead and say it, I urged. Rick looked back at me, was swallowed, then reached inside his pocket and pulled out a ring box. When I saw it, my eyeballs bulged and my jaw dropped in shock. What were you? Rick, what are you doing? A tear slid down his cheek. He is definitely an actor. A tear slid down his cheek as he opened the box. Inside was a beautiful ring. The diamond sparkled in sunlight. I love you, Nina, he began, overcome with emotions. I wanted to ask you to marry me, but I know that I can't do that now. My breath caught in my throat. You want to marry me? Rick nodded and wiped away another tear. Nope, and all the notes. My mind scrambled to catch up with the weight of the moment. He wanted to marry me? Why? How would he even do that? But Rick, I protested, my heart sinking in my chest. I'm not well. He shook his head. I know, but with everything going on, I thought you deserved some happiness. I believe you're going to pull through from your sickness, but even if we don't have much time together, I wanted you to know that what we have is real. I stared at Rick, my mouth gaping open with surprise. I had no idea that he felt this deeply for me. He showed it every day by his actions, but he never came out and told me he loved me. I loved him too, but I had been afraid to say it because I wasn't sure how he would respond. So y'all ain't even told each other that y'all love you. We hadn't dated that long, only 6 months, but with how everything went between us before my sickness, I was beginning to think that he was the one. After I got sick, I expected him to back off, especially when I received my diagnosis, but he didn't. Rick stood right by me like he had been there all along. What man would do such a thing for a woman he barely knew? He spent a lot of time together, sure, but 6 months wasn't a great deal of time to know for sure that she was someone you wanted to spend your life with. But you only got 6 months left anyway. I'm sorry. We're moving too fast, my mind said, but you never mentioned marriage to him. He brought it up to you. My heart replied. The fact, along with the consistent way that he had acted towards me. Maybe you could get engaged and wait to see what happens with the chemo, then make your decision, I rationalized. Rick was staring at me with such love and adoration. I wanted to break down and cry. He would never know how hard it was for me to embrace his love. It was trying my hardest to understand, but felt like I was failing miserably. My heart warmed with love mixed with angst. This was such a beautiful gesture. Realizing I had left him hanging after becoming lost in thought, I said, "You would still want to marry me despite the fact that I may not make it?" That's exactly why I want to marry you, because you may not make it. Rick nodded without hesitation. I don't care about the diagnosis. All I want is you. Those words helped me break my fear. Oh, Rick! I practically tackled him as I flung my arms around his neck and squeezed him tightly. He hugged me back. Our bodies swam back and forth. This is real, my mind repeated, while my heart struggled to accept it. When we pulled back slightly, he kissed my lips. You don't have to decide now. I probably shouldn't have told you anyway. I shook my head, forcing my doubts to the corner of my mind. No, this was exactly what I needed. I wanted to do this, Rick. I want us to get married. He seemed taken aback. Are you sure? His pupils danced back and forth as he studied my eyes. I wasn't completely sure, but my impulse had taken over. It may have been a selfish decision, but with everything that I ever wanted dangling right before me, I couldn't help but take the chance. I nodded, feeling my elation sweeping through me. Yes, I'm sure. This may be one of my last happy moments, and I want to spend it with you. Rick kissed me deeply, then slid the ring onto my finger. I was settled, and I couldn't believe it. Despite the fact that my life was ending, I would still get to be somebody's wife. Chapter 10. The next week seemed to fly by, and it was like that I was floating on a cloud. I visited my mother every day, and the doctor said she seemed to be stable, though things could still turn for the worse. My muscles ached, and dizzy spells seemed to be dying down. It was still too soon to tell, but the chemo might have been working. By the time she, by the by the time the following Sunday rolled around, I was almost back to my old self. I didn't know if it was because I was still high off excitement about the proposal or the fact that my mother seemed like she was going to pull through, but it felt good. Oh, Chile. Like I was ready to take life by the reins and run with it until I told my best friend Jamaica I was getting married. I was sitting at my desk in my home office, my computer cranked up and running, a coffee mug on one side of the desk and a pen and pad on the other side. I swung back and forth in my swivel chair as I looked up 10 different locations for our ceremony to be held at. We wanted something small and private since Rick was estranged from his parents and my mom was still in a coma. I made a mental note to ask Rick if he had any other family or friends to invite. On my side, my obvious first choice was Jamaica, and I was thinking of a few cousins too. I was an only child. Rick said that he had older siblings. Would he want to invite them too? Now that I thought of it, Rick barely ever talked about his family or friends. Because he's conniving. Was he estranged from his siblings like he was his parents? Maybe that was something we could discuss tonight. As I kept scrolling, my jaw dropped when I stumbled across a site that seemed to have the perfect venue. Beautiful scenery, trees and flowers, and handcrafted altar made of wood. I could picture me and Rick standing beneath it, the officiant standing behind us, and our guests congregated on the grass. The vision was so breathtaking, I had to call Jamaica. Thankfully, it was right around her lunchtime, so she answered. Hey, boo, she said in a bubbly tone. What's up? My heart leaped in my chest. I have something to tell you. The words tumbled out of my mouth so fast that I wasn't sure that they were coherent. I had held back the news for over a week for a couple of reasons. One, I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop and for Rick to realize he made a serious mistake by proposing. Two, I was still grappling with whether I should go through with the wedding given my illness. And three, I knew deep down in my heart that Jamaica may not have the most welcoming reaction to my decision to get married. She and Rick never had any issues, but I knew my best friend. She would likely have the same doubts I had, that I was moving too fast. I didn't want to hear her say that because then it would make it real. Now that I admitted that to myself, I feel guilty, because didn't that mean my sense of doubt was stronger than I realized? Oh well, I told myself. No turning back now. Besides, why shouldn't you get a chance at happiness? Rick knew your situation and still proposed. Why fight him on it? Don't sabotage your chance at true love because this might be your only chance. Jamaica broke me out of my thoughts, seeming to catch up with my excitement. What is it? She giggled. I took a deep breath before launching into the story. I made sure to lay it on thick, recounting every detail of Rick's heartfelt speech. And by the time I finished, I was sure Jamaica was swooning right with me. She wasn't. Nina, what? She screeched. When I finished, all my excitement came to a swift halt. We're getting married, I repeated. When is this supposed to happen? She asked in an accusatory tone. Where was all this coming from? Why did Jamaica seem so upset? Of course I knew why, but I wasn't ready to admit that out loud yet. Jamaica, on the other hand, had no problem vocalizing her opinion. She came out and said how she was feeling. Nina, that don't sound right. Her words rang in my ears as I fought hard not to let them get to me. What do you mean it doesn't sound right? She answered immediately. Why would he propose now, out of the blue? And why would he do it in the morning you find out your mother overdosed on drugs and fell into a coma? Now that she had said it that way, my happy emotions dissipated. I fell silent for a long time. Jamaica was silent too. Then she cut back with a softer tone. Don't get me wrong, Bestie. I love you. I want you to be happy. But the way Rick did that just doesn't add up. I struggled to recover, but what do you mean by that? He wasn't going to do it at first, Jamaica. I had to pull it out of him. I explained to her the conversation we had once again, adding in the details about Rick's initial reluctancy. When I finished, she still sounded unsure. Listen, I know you're excited, but it still doesn't sit right with me. Her negative attitude was starting to blow me. Is it because I'm sick? I accused, growing defensive. You don't think sick people deserve to be married? No, Nina, it's nothing like that. I want to be happy too, Jamaica. Tears flooded my eyes. Don't you understand that I'm dying? She didn't respond, so I continued. I was there for you when you married Kevin, and I have done nothing but support you every step of the way. But the moment I get proposed to, I'm met with nothing but resistance. Do you want to see me suffer? I knew my response was irrational. My best friend didn't mean any harm by her comments, but I couldn't help but to take my frustration out on her. Jamaica finally answered, Of course I don't want you to suffer, Nina. That's not all what I'm saying. So what are you saying then? I couldn't keep the bite out of my tone. Jamaica relented. Listen, I need to get back to work because my break is almost up. But I'll call you when I get off, okay? Yeah, you do that. I hung up before she could say anything else. I tried to concentrate for the rest of the day on planning for the wedding, but the more I tried to do, the more jumbled my thoughts became. What if Jamaica was right and Rick and I shouldn't get married? Child, then he gonna try to off Jamaica too. I already had doubts when he proposed, but should I tell him I changed my mind? It didn't seem fair to him to accept this proposal and then renege a week later because my best friend didn't agree with my decision. At that moment, a memory crept into my mind. When Kevin proposed to Jamaica, Jamaica's parents didn't agree with them getting married. They told her she should hold off until she finished school and Kevin got a better job. But they didn't wait. They got married within 6 months, like they planned, and now it was 7 years later and they were still going strong, with three beautiful children to boot. Jamaica graduated college and got her master's, and Kevin moved up the ranks in his company to a managerial position. They were set financially, took vacations every year, and their children and marriage were thriving. Why couldn't I have that? Your situation is not the same, my mind said, but my heart didn't want to budge. It was so overwhelmed with thoughts that I hadn't noticed Rick entering the house until he walked into my office. I startled at the sight of him. Hey, hey, he assessed me with his eyes. Are you okay? What are you doing? I looked at my blacked out desktop screen and sighed, then turned back to face him. I was planning our wedding, but then I called Jamaica to tell her we got engaged. And a questioning look filled his eyes. And then she just don't keep nothing to herself. She be telling him everything. Um, I flipped my pen on the desk. She thinks we're moving too fast. Rick stared, then nodded as if he understood. He spoke his next few words slowly and cautiously. What do you think? I shook my head. I don't know what I think anymore. I was giddy with excitement all day. Then when I called her, she really blew my high. Rick's eyes narrowed. Why do you think that she was so adamant about us getting married? I thought for a second, mainly because of everything that's going on with my mom and my sickness. Rick scoffed. That didn't stop her from marrying Kevin. She's about to be lonely then under exactly. She's like the perfect victim. My jaw dropped. What do you mean? Rick continued, didn't you tell me before that Jamaica's parents didn't want her and Kevin getting married, but they did it anyway? I stared at him. I don't remember him telling Rick that, but I must have since he knew. He got cameras in the house. He listening to her conversation? I mean, he probably is since he checking her bank account and her text messages every night. Yes, that's true. Then we have nothing to worry about, he finished. People get married every day despite what others think. At the end of the day, the decision is between the two people getting married, not anyone else. If I love you and you love me, what's to stop us from moving forward with what we want to do? The way Rick broke it down was boosting my confidence for sure, but I couldn't help the niggling feeling of doubt that refused to leave my mind. Next scene. That was a close call, mentioning something he had read in Nina's journal. I thought it was cameras. But Rick had to take the chance. There was no way he could allow Jamaica to ruin his plans. Rick had found Nina's journal one night he went snooping after drugging her to sleep. He stayed up half the night reading the pages and gained great insight to his girlfriend's psyche. He knew what made her tick, the right words to say or gestures to use to get her to agree with his reasoning. Nina couldn't be pushed too hard or she would rebel, but if Rick twisted his argument to the right angle, she would become putty in his hands, eager to be molded. Rick and Nina were getting married one way or another, and there wasn't a thing her best friend could do about it. Jamaica had better tread lightly, Rick thought. He already eliminated Pam, at least for the time being. If Jamaica had to be handled too, he already had a plan in place. I told you. I said Jamaica gonna be next messing around with Mr. Rick. Chapter 11. I woke up this morning feeling sick to my stomach. A cramping pain filled my belly and nausea consumed me like I was about to become violently ill. I rushed to the bathroom and retched, but barely anything came out. When I exited the bathroom, I plopped face down on the bed and sobbed. Was my sickness returning? I hope not, because it seemed like I was doing so good. Rick's voice echoed in my mind. You will need to go through several rounds of chemo, Nina. It may make you feel better at first, but your symptoms may return. Just be patient. I was supposed to have a follow-up appointment with Dr. Black in a few days. Just yesterday, I was eager to see him because I was sure he would tell me the cancer had been wiped out and I had a clean bill of health. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe it was because of the stress. Jamaica's comments had done a number on me, and then when she didn't call me when she got off work, it only made me feel worse. I got that she was busy with her husband and 3 kids, but I needed my best friend too. Was that selfish of me to want my best friend to take time with me and process my feelings? Rick had already left for work before I became ill. I wanted to call him and tell him what happened, but I felt too weak to reach for my phone. Was I being a baby? Maybe I should get up and eat something so that I would feel better. Mustering up the strength, I turned over in bed and stared at the ceiling. It was a white ceiling with a swirly design. My eyes followed the twists and turns until I grew dizzy. The room spun for a few moments. I waited for the spell to pass, then forced myself to see the position. I can do this. I whispered, I'm not going to allow myself to get sick again. It was a moment of denial, I knew, but there was no way to control cancer. But it made me feel better to pretend that I could. I lowered my legs so that my feet touched the floor, then I planted them firmly as I stood. Now that I was standing and the lightheaded feeling had passed, I squared my shoulders and exited my bedroom, headed for the kitchen. Once there, I pulled out my shiny oak cabinet and grabbed some cereal. Filling my bowl, then I added milk to carry the bowl and spoon I grabbed from a drawer in the table. The table was an 8-seater that had an elegant design with flowers as the masterpiece, as the centerpiece. Made of solid wood, it shines so clearly I could see my reflection on it. Setting my bowl on top of my hand-woven placement, I forced myself to eat a spoonful. I took my time chewing and swallowed it down, hoping I wasn't being so careful just for it to come right back up when I finished. Thankfully, I didn't feel sick after the first bite. I continued to eat in a slow, methodically fashion until it seemed like the walls of my huge kitchen were closing in on me. I pushed the placemat so hard that a few droplets of milk sloshed over the sides of the bowl. Why did my life have to turn out this way? I stared at the bright green walls. This house was so full of light, while I was consumed with darkness. The contrast was so striking it suffocated me. A faint buzzing sound could be heard from the direction of my bedroom. My cell phone. I stood and made my way back to the room, catching the call from the hospital just before the ring ran out. Hello? I answered in a gloomy tone. Nina, this is Nurse Paris from Lafayette Hospital. I'm like, oh my goodness. I braced myself for potential bad news. The hospital hadn't called me since I went to visit my mother every day. Why were they calling now? Sorry, I be reading ahead sometimes. It's just a little bit. It's like I braced them to. As if she heard my thoughts, Nurse Paris continued, I have good news. Your mother woke up this morning. Would you have time to come see her? I clasped a hand over my mouth in shock. My gloominess dissipated and becoming replaced with joy. Yes, yes, I can come now. I practically screamed in the woman's ear as my emotions caught up with what she was telling me. Please, please do not call Rick and tell that man. Nurse Paris giggled. Okay, come on down. She's a little groggy, but I'm sure she'll be just as excited to see you as you are her. When I got off the phone, my heart raced with excitement. My body was still out of whack, but my mind took over. I went to my walk-in closet and scanned the sea of new outfits I had purchased on a shopping trip first when I first won the money. After selecting a simple jean and t-shirt ensemble, I hopped in the shower. Another dizzy spell passed over me as the three shower heads sprayed me with water, but I fought through it, willing myself to stay strong so that I could see my mother. Wrapping myself in a full body towel, I slipped into my slippers and walked slowly and carefully to my bed. Thankfully, no more dizzy spells hit me through my legs felt a little weak, like I was wading through water. After drying off and lotioning my body, I got dressed and threw my shoulder-length hair into a ponytail. Okay, we know you got hair, girl. That was when I noticed a tiny splotch of red on my collarbone, a fresh bruise. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Nothing would stop me today. I made it outside to my car without another incident. Then I drove to the hospital. When I got to the ICU, my heart was pounding with every step that I took towards my mother's room. I walked in, and Nurse Harris was checking her vitals. Mom was staring blankly with faraway expression on her face. She barely seemed to register that I had entered the room. Mom, I tensed, waiting her reaction. She slowly tilted her head towards me, her eyes catching mine. The corner of her lips turned up like she was trying to smile but couldn't. My heart pained. What's wrong? I asked. Nurse Paris soothed me with her words. Don't worry, she's just a little sluggish. We were going to do some tests and exercise with her today, but the fact that she woke up is a good sign. I swallowed, trying to choose my next words carefully in case my mom could understand what I was saying. I didn't want to upset her. Do they? What about her brain? The doctor mentioned that there might be some damage. Nurse Paris smiled. That's what the tests are for. We'll be testing her today and we'll do some more each day to check her memory, movements, all that good stuff. Right now, everything looks promising though. She remembers her name. When the doctor asked her this morning, she nodded. I exhaled in relief, walking over to my mother to hug her. She looked at me and her eyes welled up like she wanted to say something, but she couldn't talk. It's okay, Mom. Just take your time. Next thing, Dr. Black has been monitoring Pamela Smith's progress, so he already knew what the call was about when the burner phone rang. Still, he had no choice but to answer. Hello? Do you think I'm playing with you? Rick launched directly into his threatening tirade. I gave you over a week to get it done, and now she's awake? Dr. Black's mind scrambled for a stalling tactic. But the notes say that she can't speak and her reactions are subdued. There's a chance the brain damage caused memory loss. You and I both know that's not guaranteed. Rick was growing frantic. Dr. Black could feel it. I gave you one job and you failed it. Why didn't you get rid of her when you had the chance? I already told you I couldn't get access to her room. BS, you stalled and now she's awoke. Now she's woke. Time for some consequences. Dr. Black's heart lurched. What kind of consequences? What are you talking about? I've been holding up my end of the bargain. I think I'm going to email some of the evidence to the media, Rick said, a subtly threatening tone. Something tells me they'll find what you did quite interesting. Come on, Rick, we had a deal, Dr. Black yelled, his veins in his neck bulging. His assistant knocked on his door and popped her head in, but he waved her off, turning in his swivel chair and lowering his tone. Just give me some more time. Nina's follow-up appointment is in 2 days. I already have the test results prepared. Excuse me. Your plan is still moving forward. Rick was silent for a moment. You better not F that up too. Next scene. I stayed with my mom most of the day, but she wasn't able to talk to me by the time 5 o'clock came. Rick stopped by during one of her naps to check in on me and offer his congratulations. I needed to get home to prepare dinner. Rick had been doing most. If you want it done so bad, why you can't do it yourself? Don't want to get your hands dirty? Rick had been doing most of the cooking lately, so I wanted to surprise him for a change. Despite the fact that my mom wasn't completely out of the woods yet, her waking up was a strong sign of encouragement. I wanted to celebrate. I stopped at the grocery store and was able to grab the items I needed without growing ill. Then I headed home. When I pulled up, Jamaica pulled into my driveway and parked behind me. I tensed when I saw her car, then I slowly emerged from my vehicle. With all that had been going on, I completely forgot about her, but I hoped she wasn't here now to try to convince me once again not to marry Rick. Hey, I greeted when she approached me. We shared a brief hug, then Jamaica reached out to grab one of my grocery bags. How are you feeling? She asked. We headed towards the front door. I'm okay, I responded. Felt a little sick early, but I think I'm good now. I unlocked the door and we entered the house. Following me to the kitchen, Jamaica said, That's great. I'm glad to hear that you've been feeling better. I opened my mouth to say that my health actually seemed to be getting worse again, but decided against it. Why are you here? I asked instead. Jamaica froze. Well, Nina, I just wanted to apologize. I think my words were harsh to you yesterday. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. My anger at her subsided. It's fine. I understand why you're concerned. So she looked at me with surprise. You do? I nodded as I grabbed a pan from my hanging rack and then took up a pot from the center island. Yes, Rick and I haven't been together that long, so it made sense that you would have questions. That response seemed to appease my friend, but she didn't say anything else. I washed my hands, then began preparing a meal of spaghetti and garlic bread. It wasn't anything fancy, but Rick always said that it was one of his favorites. I didn't want to try to elaborate meals since I was pressed for time and wasn't sure if I could get sick again while preparing it. Jamaica jumped into action to help me cut up the onions, garlic, green pepper, and soon the meat was sizzling. I put the water to a boil for the pasta and then sat with Jamaica in the kitchen table after grabbing a bottle of wine from my wine cabinet. Jamaica and I made small talk and then we were laughing and joking like old times as the spaghetti was cooking. When I finished, I drained the pasta with a strainer and I put it back in the pan just as Rick came home. Nina, he called out as he strolled towards the kitchen. Why is... His voice trailed off when he saw Jamaica. A glint of anger crossed his features before his expression returned to neutral. She keep catching these looks, but she ain't doing nothing about it. I had just been crying to him yesterday about how Jamaica was against our wedding, but he had no way of knowing we made up. Hey, Jamaica, he said in an even tone. Jamaica waved as she spoke, already feeling the effects of the wine. Hey, Rick, you're just in time. Rick turned to me. I wasn't aware you was cooking dinner tonight. That was when I noticed a brown bag of Luigi's in his hands. I gasped, Oh no, you brought dinner? I'm so sorry, babe. I wanted to surprise you. Jamaica stared between us, then reached for the bag. Well, if you want, I could take the Luigi's home. My husband and kids would devour it. No, Rick said, snatching the bag away, and Jamaica and I were startled by his visceral reaction. What's in the bag? What the H is wrong with you? Jamaica said, her eyes narrowed. Yes, Rick, what's wrong with Jamaica taking the food if I already cooked? Rick calmed down and shook his head. Nothing. It's just I bought this for us to celebrate for your mom. He stared at me. For your mom? Jamaica asked with a question in her eyes. Oh, yeah, she woke up today. Jamaica's jaw dropped. She did? I nodded. OMG, Nina. Why didn't you tell me? I've been praying every day for you and your mother. Jamaica got up from her seat and walked around the table to give me a hug while Rick carried the Luigi's bag to the refrigerator and put it inside. I opened my mouth to protest and tell him that I understood him waiting to buy dinner to celebrate my mom's recovery, but I was still fine with Jamaica taking the food. But Jamaica started asking about a bunch of questions about my mother, and I grew distracted. Next scene, Rick sat and stewed internally as Jamaica helped herself to some of the dinner that Nina prepared. Thankfully, neither of them mentioned the Luigi's again. Rick would have to get more creative with his answers. There was no way that he could let Jamaica take that food home to her family. He'd already added the drugs to Nina's meals before he got home. If Jamaica's family grew sick, it would immediately cause suspicion. Of course, he could chalk it up to food poisoning, but at the same time, it was too risky. The more Jamaica said of his future, that's why he been cooking and putting your drugs in there before you go to sleep. The more Jamaica sat at his future kitchen table, the more Rick wanted to get rid of her for good. How though? What could he do that wouldn't cause suspicion? As he ate, he went over several options in his mind until he settled on the tragic car accident. It shouldn't be too difficult to manage since Jamaica lived nearby and had to drive through a rocky hillside on her way to work in the mornings. One snip of her brakes would shut her mouth for good. Finally, Rick could let out a genuine smile. He sipped his wine in perfect peace, ready to be one step closer to Nina's money. Bro, I can't. This author is obsessed with her hair. I guess in the author's defense, they're trying to like give you a picture of how Nina looks, and I've seen authors do that before, like her green eyes. Be like, okay, we get it. She got green eyes. No, the bruises is a special is like coming from the sickness, from the cancer apparently. But he got to be doing something to make the bruises appear. Like he got to be like bruising her overnight because like just imagine if she's getting drugged in her food and she go to sleep and she wakes up and she sees the bruises, then she doesn't really know how they got there. She thinks they come from the cancer or whatever. We're gonna try to read like 3 more chapters and then we're gonna take a pause to tomorrow. Chapter 12. I went to visit mom the next day, and when I did, she looked much better. Her demeanor was much more alert, though she was still sluggish. Nina, she dragged out when she saw me. Her words and movements were slow, but mom was on her way back. I could tell. I couldn't wait to share the good news with Rick and Jamaica. Mom and I chatted throughout the day in between her naps. It was good to speak to her again, though I didn't dare approach the subject of what led her to an overdose. After around lunchtime, Nick popped into the room to visit. Mom was taking one of her naps. How is she? He asked, his eyes darting back and forth. He tightened his jaw, then straightened his stance. I studied him, picking up on his discomfort. She's much better, I answered. She spoke to me. Rick's eyes bulged. Spoke? I nodded. What did she say? I shrugged. Not much. Mostly small talk. I think she... Mom stirred, then opened her eyes. She blinked a few times, adjusting to the harsh fluorescent lights. As her gaze settled on Rick, the change was instant and chilling. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating with unmistakable terror. She gripped her sheet so tightly her knuckles brightened. The steep beep of her heart monitor suddenly accelerated, filling the room with frantic rhythm. My own pulse quickened in response. What's happening? I asked, my voice barely audible over the machine's alarm. I turned to Rick, expecting to see concern mirroring my own. Instead, his face had drained of color, a sheen of sweat visibly on his forehead. He took a step backwards, his shoes squeaking against the linoleum floor. Mom's trembling voice cut through the chaos. Get out! The words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. I couldn't quite place. Was it fear? Anger? I looked back at Rick, question forming on my lips, but the words died as I saw his expression. He looked guilty. No, that couldn't be right. A nurse rushed in, her rubbery soled shoes sliding against the floor. Are you okay, honey? What is it? She asked Mom, quickly checking the machines. Mom's gaze never left Rick. She raised a shaky finger pointing directly at him. It's him! My mind reeled. What does she mean? How could Rick, the man who'd been by my side through all of this, be the source of such distress? What's him? I asked, my voice cracking. Mom, what do you mean? But Mom's expression had transformed. The fear was still there, but now it was overshadowed by a rage I'd never seen before. She struggled against the nurse trying to push her away, get out of the bed. Get out! She bellowed, her voice stronger than it had been all day. Rick faced me, his expressions unreadable. I think I should leave. I'm upsetting your mom. Rick, no. I started, but the words died in my throat as I glanced back at Mom. Her eyes burned with an intensity that made me step back. I'll go, Rick said quietly, and before I could gather my thoughts, he was gone. As soon as Rick left, that change in Mom was unmistakable. Her heart monitor began to slow, the frantic beeping fading into a steady rhythm. I turned back to her, bewildered and concerned whirring inside me. Mom, what was that all about? But the outburst seemed to have drained her. She sagged back against her pillow, her eyes already fluttering closed. The nurse touched my arm gently. Maybe we should come back tomorrow. Please don't come back tomorrow. Please stay there with your mama, because if you leave, they gonna kill her. They gonna kill her. The nurse touched my arm. I swallowed hard, nodding numbly as Mom drifted off to sleep. As I left the room, my mind was a whirlwind of questions. What had just happened? And more importantly, what did it mean? Next scene, I was driving back home when a call came through from Jamaica. What with the day that I just had, I could use a distraction, so I answered. Hello? Hey, Jamaica said, her tone somber. I could barely hide my frustration. What's wrong with you? Like, Jamaica sighed. Nina, I have something to get off my chest. My hair stood on end. What could she be hinting at? What could she have happened between yesterday and today that caused her to need to get something off her chest? I flicked my blinker to take a left turn. She spoke. I've been thinking about the incident yesterday. What incident? My teeth clenched as I sat on my edge. I did not need no more drama today. The whole back and forth with Rick about the food. Does your boyfriend have a problem with me? I scrunched my face in confusion. You mean my fiance? No, Rick doesn't have a problem with you. Why? An elderly man attempted to cross in front of me, so I slowed to a stop to let him go. Jamaica continued as I waited for him to cross to the other side. He practically wrenched the bag from my hands and made a flimsy excuse about wanting to save the food for you and him. I mean, I get he wanted to celebrate Nina, but I couldn't help feeling that it was something deeper. I let out an exasperated breath. What could it have been, Jamaica? He acted like he was upset to see me as soon as he walked in the door. Yes, but that was nothing. He might have been upset because I told him that you thought that we were moving too fast. Jamaica fell silent. Oh, she said. After a few moments, I calmed now that she seemed to be changing her mind. Yeah, that was probably it, I insisted. He was just as excited as I was about moving forward, but when you made your comment, it upset both of us. Jamaica didn't respond. Hello? I pulled onto my street. Jamaica, listen, Nina, I'm going to ask you this one more time, then I'm going to let it go because ultimately the decision is up to you. Are you sure you're making the right decision? Before she could finish asking the question, I was already answering. Yes, Jamaica, I'm sure. Why do we have to keep going over this? When you and Kevin got married, all I did nothing but support you. All I want is the same in return. Is that too much to ask? More silence than, no, it's not. Great, I just got home and I need to go pee, so I'll call you later. I hung up with another word and threw my phone in my purse before stalking towards my front door. What is with everyone lately? Next scene, when Rick came home, I was sitting on the sofa watching TV with the empty wine glass clasped between my fingers. He glanced at me while slipping off his shoes. Hey, what's up with you? Nothing, I said in a way that let him know that it was definitely something. He set his briefcase down by the door, then walked over. What is it? He asked, sitting down and loosening his red tie. I blew out a short breath. I looked down at my empty wine glass as I spoke. Nothing, I'm just bummed about my mom, and then Jamaica and I had another conversation. Why she keep telling this man stuff? I get it, he your man. You can't keep nothing to yourself. My gaze trailed back up to him. His expression was neutral. You and Jamaica, what did you guys talk about? She's back to thinking we're moving too fast. We can't help how others feel, Nina. I know that it's just what? I shook my head and looked away. Nothing. Hey. He gently cupped my chin and turned my head so that I was facing him again. I have some news that might cheer you up. What news? I searched his eyes for clues. Rick held back a smile. I booked us a venue. My eyes widened. A venue? He nodded, his grin growing. Where? He pulled out his phone and showed me the email confirmation which came with a set of pictures. I scrolled through them. The place was beautiful, full of lavish imagery. Definitely something I would have picked if I had seen it, but an uncertain feeling gnawed at me. Why hadn't Rick mentioned he was looking at venues before? What? He asked, noticing my expression. You don't like it? I looked at the date Rick selected it, and it was less than a month away. My eyes shot to his. Rick, we barely have time to plan for this. He looked confused. What's there to plan for? I thought we were doing something small and private so that we could focus on the extended honeymoon. We were, but nothing told you to confirm this with me first? Rick took his phone back. Nina, where's this coming from? I thought you were excited to get married. There go that gaslighting again. I thought I was helping. He swallowed, then looked at me with a guilty expression. I calmed, no, this is very helpful, I assured him, and the venue is beautiful. It's just that you caught me off guard. Rick was silent for a second, then nodded. I understand. I guess I was thinking because you were frazzled the other day, I could take some of the weight off your shoulders. But I totally should have called you before I booked it to confirm. I'm sorry, baby. He laying it on thick. Kevin wasn't trying to unalive her bestie. She talks too dang much, and her bestie needs to tell her outside of her house that she talks too much. For real, she talks too much. That's what's gonna get her unalive. Like, she just, like, be setting herself up. Like he said, she putty in his hands. We were planning to. Oh, I shook my head. No, don't be sorry. We were planning to do it sooner rather than later anyway. And you're right. There isn't much to plan. We just need to find out officiants, send out invites, then need my dress, and you need your tux. Oh, and the honeymoon? Rick grabbed my hands to calm me because I was getting worked up again. Breathe, he said. I nodded and obliged his request. His expression brightened again. How about we hire a planner? Some of the guys at work were talking about Maria Fontaine. They say she's great and not that expensive. I thought about it. Money wasn't a problem, and I hadn't made much progress on the plan I attempted to do. Do you have her contact info? Rick nodded. They showed me her website. I'll text you the link. He tapped his phone screen, and my phone buzzed with the notification. Thank you, baby, I said. Rick smiled. Of course, that's what I'm here for. The rest of the night went smooth, but when time came for bed, I tossed and turned as Rick slept soundly beside me. Was I making the right decision? Dreadful thoughts invaded my mind. My mom's reaction to seeing Rick, Jamaica's adamant belief that we were moving too fast, my upcoming appointment with Dr. Black, it was all becoming too much for me. Something had to give, and soon. Maybe tomorrow would be a better day. Maybe my appointment with Dr. Black would bring me some good news. I hope so, because I wasn't sure how much more mental anguish I could take. We're gonna read this last chapter, and then we're gonna pause, and then we're gonna come back tomorrow at 12:30 and hopefully finish it up. Um, I stood outside the hospital I may read two more chapters. I stood outside the hospital, willing myself to walk in. It was time for my follow-up with Dr. Black. This could go really good or dreadfully bad. Depending on what he had to share with me, my mind went down a rabbit hole as I continued to stand there as if caught in a trance, wrestling back and forth about what the results could be. I had felt better for a couple of days, but then my health seemed to plummet again. Was that normal effect after chemo? I had lots of questions for Dr. Black, but what if I walked in there and saw a grim expression on his face? Then I would know that he had bad news. I didn't know if I could take it. I blinked to snap myself out of my thoughts, then took a step forward, reasoning that I might as well get it over with. The results were there whether I liked it or not. I walked calmly towards the sliding glass door, but with every step that I took, a sense of impending doom consumed me. Right before I entered, I made a split decision and stepped to the side. I didn't want to go in there. I didn't want to hear more bad news. I stared at the building, then at the parking lot, contemplating my next move. If I went in there and Dr. Black told me that all hope was lost and I was essentially dying, could I handle it? My mind told me I was being dramatic, especially since the chemo was supposed to be helping me get better. But still, try as I might, my feet wouldn't budge. I slowly turned my back towards the parking lot and immediately felt lighter. The light feeling must have became a sign that I shouldn't go to the appointment today. After taking a few steps towards my car, I felt even better. Maybe today just wasn't a good day. Maybe I should call Dr. Black's office and reschedule for another time. When I re-entered my car, I stared at the building once again. I forgot just that quickly that I was supposed to go see my mom right after my appointment. But after what happened yesterday, I wasn't sure that was a good idea. I needed to clear approach my problems with the level head. Turning my key in the ignition, I started my car up, checking my mirrors, and pulled out of the parking space. Then I exited the lot. The further I drove from the hospital, the better and lighter I felt. It was likely in a state of delusion, but at the moment I didn't care. I needed to breathe. Pressing the button for the radio, Chris Brown's voice serenaded my ears. I turned up the volume to drown out my racing thoughts. After the song played, a commercial came on advertising a free vacation for the caller who would name 3 animals that laid eggs but weren't birds. It was a bizarre question, but it helped to further distract me, so I played along with it. I thought for a second, trying to come up with some animals, but then an entirely different idea came to mind. What if I took a vacation? What if escaping from all my problems, even just for a moment, was the answer I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life? The more I thought about it, the better the idea sounded. It wasn't like I didn't have the money. My bank account was holding millions. I didn't have a job to call out from because I had quit as soon as I won the lottery. What was standing before me in our open roads or open airways? Cancer, was my mind's sarcastic reply, but the music came back on. I turned it up higher and silenced those thoughts. When I arrived home, I immediately went for my suitcase. Throwing a few items and toiletries into it, I was ready to go. This was the most spontaneous decision I've ever made outside of quitting my job on the spot when I won the lottery. But if I was going to die anyway, why not do it my way? Why not enjoy my final days the way that I wanted to, with no one breathing down my back, telling me what I should or shouldn't do? The very thought of such freedom was exhilarating. Pulling out my phone, I searched for flights. I wanted to go somewhere warm, somewhere I wouldn't have to lift a finger. My eyes widened when I found the perfect place. I quickly booked the flight, then found a nearby hotel, booked a suite there too. Pretty soon I'll be laid out on the beach, watching the waves and enjoying margaritas in the sand. Wheeling my suitcase towards the front door, I stopped short as a call from Rick was coming through my phone. Should I answer? I teetered back and forth for a moment before declining the call, then tossing my phone into the sofa. As soon as I did that, I felt more freedom. Exiting my home, I wheeled my suitcase to my car and popped open the trunk. Slamming it shut, I suddenly felt guilty. What if Rick grew worried about me? Of course he would be worried if he came home and I was suddenly gone. Doubts clouded my mind. I couldn't leave without saying anything. That wasn't a responsible decision. At the same time, why did I have to be responsible all the time? The indecision was unaliving me until I got an idea and raced back inside my house. Grabbing a scrap of paper from my office, I jotted down a quick note, folding it and taping it to the front door while I was sure he would see it. Then I locked the door, hopped in my car, and pulled out of the driveway without a backwards glance. Chapter 14. Cause I wasn't expecting this to take a turn like this. I was sick almost the whole flight. I don't know if it was from being airborne or the fact that my cancer was likely getting worse. Part of me didn't care. I had booked a one-way ticket to a beachfront resort in Miami and nothing was stopping me. Although my decision was spontaneous, I didn't want to risk leaving the country and becoming even sicker with no chance for proper medical treatment overseas. I figured if worse came to worse, I could be flown back from Miami to Massachusetts in a matter of hours. When I arrived in Miami, I quickly realized that leaving my cell phone at home wasn't the greatest idea. How was I supposed to order an Uber? Way to go, Nina. I criticized myself. Then I thought about it. I brought my tablet with me on the flight to listen to an audiobook. I didn't get that far into the story because I had to keep getting up to go to the bathroom, but I should be able to download the Uber app from my tablet to order a ride. I slipped it from my purse and quickly swiped the screen going to the app store to download Uber. Thankfully, my attempt was successful and soon I was wheeling my suitcase towards my waiting ride. Never again will I leave my cell phone at home while on vacation, I mused under my breath as I sat back in the leather seats, heading towards my hotel suite. When I arrived at the hotel, the first thing I was taken aback by was the sight of the beautiful palm trees. I watched them sway in the gentle breeze for few moments, then headed inside to check into my suite. Okay, push pause. Now with her being out of town, this is enough time for Rick to unalive her mother, hurt her best friend, with her out the way, and then make her feel even more guilty for leaving and not really telling nobody. Oh my goodness. But sometimes, have you ever wanted to just do something like that? Like just get up and go, leave your phone, or put it on D&D, and because it's like sometimes you be feeling like people don't care, and you just be needing that space to think. Um, when I arrived at the hotel, the first thing I was taken aback by was the sight of the beautiful palm trees. I hope not either, but I watched them sway in the gentle breeze for a few moments, then headed aside to check into my suite. Once inside, I was in awe of the beautiful decor. The concierge escorted me to my suite, and as he opened the door, I gasped. The spacious room before me was a paradise within a paradise. To my right, a wall-to-floor to ceiling window showcased a breathtaking ocean view. A sliding glass door led to a private patio that seemed to hover right. I have, but I took my phone. See, the thing about it, with your phone, you're kind of prone to check it. I mean, you could put it on D&D. Yeah, I mean that probably was a smart. Good thing she did have her tablet though, because I guess you can download the same apps. But Rick seems like the type of person that would have a tracker on everything she do anyway if he already drugging her. But I'm thinking about how it's going to be after she's away from him, because he had to be drugging her every night for her to be this lethargic and forgetting stuff and bruises to be popping up. Now she's going to be away from him for a couple of days. She's going to be eating her own food, not getting as sick, and maybe something's going to happen where she has to go to the doctor, and then they're going to tell her that she don't have cancer. We just trying to write our own ending to the book, you know what I'm saying? Um, He has her phone tracked, but probably not her tablet. Possibly. Let's see. Um, I know what you meant. Did you do? A sliding glass door led to a private patio that seemed to hover right above the sandy beach. The sound of crashing waves beckoning me. The main room was a study in luxury. A plush king-size bed dominated one side, draped in what I knew had to be thousand thread count sheets. They looked so inviting. I was tempted to dive in immediately. Beautiful paintings adored the walls, each one a masterpiece that added to the room's elegant ambiance. A massive 105-inch flat screen TV hung on the wall opposite to the bed, and beneath it sat a sleek desk with a laptop ready for use. As I slipped off my sandals, my toes sank into the softest carpet I've ever felt. I padded across the room to cozy mini living area, complete with a sumptuous sofa and a recliner that looked perfect for lounging. The kitchenette caught my eye next. It was small but fully equipped with a table and the chairs, a full set of dishes and gleaming stainless steel appliances included a stove and refrigerator. I could easily imagine myself enjoying a quiet breakfast here, gazing out at the ocean. Curious, I peeked into the bathroom and was not disappointed. A spacious walk-in shower stood on one side while a deep, inviting bathtub occupied the other. The marble countertops and high-end fixtures added to the overall sense of luxury. As I turned back to the main room, taking it all in once more, I couldn't help but smile. The suite was more than just a room. It was a sanctuary. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Here, surrounded by beauty and comfort, maybe I could just finally relax and clear my mind. I walked back to the sliding glass door, opened it, and stepped out onto the patio. The sea breeze caressed my face, and I looked over at the countless blue of the ocean. In that moment, I knew that I had made the right decision in coming here. Whatever challenges awaited me back home, for now, this was exactly where I needed to be. I unpacked my suitcase, placing my items in the drawers of the bureau on the wall next to my bed. Then I scanned the room once more, trying to think of what I could do first. The beach seemed to be beckoning for me to go enjoy it, so that decision was quickly made. I took off my clothes and slipped into my bathing suit, then I grabbed a towel and my tablet to head to the beach. The waves were so inviting, and I could see people in the distance having fun. Plus, I was told there was a bar where I could order cocktails, and I wanted to enjoy a much needed drink. After securing my patio door, I made my way down to the beach, spotting the bar area immediately. It was an indoor establishment, but it also had an outside patio where people were lounging and enjoying their drinks. I strolled inside, waving a few people as they waved at me. Then I stood in line to place my order. My eyes scanned the vibrant and fun atmosphere, and I continued to feel completely relaxed. This vacation was just what I needed to take my mind off everything that was going wrong in my life. I didn't know how long I was staying since I booked a one-way ticket, but I figured I would know when it was time to leave. I obviously couldn't stay away too long because I still needed to reschedule my follow-up visit with Dr. Black, but I shook my head, refocusing as the line moved forward. I bowed my head to the dance hall reggae song that was playing, suddenly swinging my hips to the rhythm. It had been a long time since I felt so carefree. It felt good to dance. Finally, it was my turn. I ordered a pink margarita, and the bartender winked at me before turning to make it. He worked pretty quickly, but when he turned back around to hand me my drink and for me to submit payment, a large, muscular-looking hand came from over my shoulder and laid a $50 bill on the bar. "I'll take care of the lady, and can I have one of those too?" A smooth, sexy voice behind me. My heart, my heart rate quickened as I turned around, my face flushing at the sight of the sexiest man alive. "Dang," I almost said, but caught myself. He was tall, caramel-skinned, and well-groomed, with a beard and a starter locks with the blonde tips. His breath was minty fresh, and when he winked at me, I caught the playfulness in his almond-shaped eyes. I was so taken aback by his gesture that I hadn't noticed the bartender finishing making his drinks. "I'm Corey," he said, extending his hand to me. I took it, and I swore electricity flooded my veins when we touched. "Want to sit down?" "Outside?" he asked, and I nodded without thinking. Corey grabbed his drink and I grabbed mine, and we walked together towards the doors of the establishment. When we got there, Corey opened the door and held it so that I could walk through. Then I led us to an empty table. We sat down, and Corey eyed me for a second, then chuckled. "I hope I wasn't too forward back there," he pointed with his thumb. I picked my jaw up from the floor and sucked on my straw before shaking my head. The explosive flavors of the margarita were incredible. The bartender had made the perfect blend of sweetness and alcohol. It wasn't so sweet that it made me sick, but it wasn't so bitter that it would cause me to grimace. "Please don't let him." Please. You like it? Corey asked, gesturing towards my drink. I nodded. He took a sip of his too. Dang, he said, cocking his head to the side, then hitting me with a goofy expression. Now that's a margarita. I burst out laughing. Corey took another sip of his drink, and I did too. Then he asked me, so what do I have the pleasure of drinking with tonight? My face flushed. Oh, I'm Nina. Sorry, I should have introduced myself. He shook his head with nonchalantness. No worries. I'm just glad to stumble across a friendly face, especially one as beautiful as yours. I blushed again. Thank you. Then I froze. Was he flirting with me? Nah. He definitely was. At some point, I needed to stop him, seeing that I was engaged and all. Despite the fact that I was enjoying his company, at the moment I realized I wasn't wearing my engagement ring. My mind scrambled to remember the last time I seen it, and I relaxed when I remember I hadn't put it on that morning. The ring was safe at home. What brings you to the resort? Corey asked, and that snapped me out of it. Oh, I just needed a break. Corey nodded as if he understood. You can say that again. My work schedule is so crazy that I barely know what day it is half the time. What do you do? I asked him with intrigue. It was Corey's turn to look bashful. Well, my main job is an oncologist. But on the weekends, I teach bachata. I gasped. Bachata? I repeated. Bachata was a Dominican style of music and dance. Corey chuckled at my look of surprise. What, a brother can't know bachata? No, I'm so sorry. Corey laughed. You're good. I'm half Dominican. Don't tell me this gonna be the oncologist that's gonna discover that she ain't got cancer for real. Corey's the playful demeanor was contagious. I decided to lighten up and enjoy his vibe. Oncology and bachata, huh? That's an interesting combination. I took a long sip of my drink. Indeed it is, Corey agreed. What do you do? I grew tongue tied for a second, then answered, right now I'm not working. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do in my life. Corey's eyes lit up. You're in school? I shook my head. No, just exploring different options. That was the closest I could get to the truth without telling him what was going on. Corey was cool, but no way was I letting him in on my secret, especially with him being an oncologist. The moment I opened my mouth, all the fun would evaporate, and he would probably ask me all kind of questions and kill my vibe. This vacation was about fun, and the fun I intended to have. Corey and I continued to laugh and joke throughout the evening until the sun set on the horizon. We called it a night after that. Corey had a suite at the resort as well, so he joked that maybe he would cook me breakfast in the morning. I laughed in response, but deep down in my heart, I knew if he did, I wouldn't mind. It's like I want to keep reading. I don't have to get up early in the morning. How do you feel? It's just like one more chapter, one more chapter. As much as she talks, now she wants to be quiet. Okay, for real, I'm just gonna do one more chapter. I didn't expect it to go this way. Okay, chapter 15. Rick got the shock of his life. Rick got the shock of his life when he came home to a scribble notepad taped on the front door from Nina. It was barely legible, but Rick made out the words, catching a flight, needed a break, I'll call soon. What the heck? Rick wrinkled his nose. Where could Nina have gone? Was this a prank? When he entered the house, he called out for her, despite her car not being in the driveway. Where was she? Did she really catch a flight somewhere? Why? Nina hadn't said anything to him last night or this morning about catching a flight. In fact, today was the day of her follow-up appointment with Edgar Black. She was supposed to be receiving the terrible news that her cancer had become more aggressive, and Rick planned to increase her dosage of drugs tonight to make it so that she could barely get out of bed in the morning. Told you. Now the plan was ruined because Nina randomly caught a flight to God knows where. Rick still wasn't fully convinced she was gone. She hadn't called or texted him all day, and now that he thought of it, she hadn't answered when he called her either. But that didn't mean anything. He called her cell phone. A buzzing sound nearby startled him. He followed the direction of the sound and discovered her cell phone wedged between two cushions of the sofa. She left her cell phone at home. Why would she do that? An ice-cold feeling coursed through Rick's veins. His mind immediately went to Edgar Black. He whipped out his burner phone and dialed his name in the context. Hello? Came Edgar's weary voice on the line. What the F did you tell her? Rick gritted his teeth. I didn't tell her anything. She missed our appointment this morning. Nina never showed up. What do you mean she never showed? Exactly what I said. Rick's mind swirled with possibilities. If you're effing with me, I'm not Rick. She never showed up today. We called her phone thinking something happened, but she didn't answer. Rick picked up Nina's cell phone again and saw several missed calls on her call log from Dr. Black's office. He appeared to be telling the truth. Where could she have gone? He asked, more to himself than to Dr. Black. I have no idea. Do you think she suspects something? There's no way that's possible unless you told her. Rick's voice trailed off as another idea came to mind. Pam. Had Pam told her daughter what he had done? It would be easy to deny his involvement since he hadn't been present when she overdosed, but still, if Pam shared what happened that night, she could have convinced Nina that Rick had something to do with it. Crap, Rick huffed and hung up on Dr. Black, calling the hospital on his regular phone next. A receptionist answered and he asked to be patched through to the ICU. When the receptionist answered, he asked about Pamela Smith's visitor. I'm sorry, sir, but Pamela Smith is no longer in the intensive care unit. The receptionist stated. Alarm bells rang through Rick's mind. No longer in ICU. Where was she? Did she leave with Nina? Before Rick could ask, the receptionist cut back in. I'm seeing here that she was transferred to a general room on the main floor. Would you like me to transfer you there? Rick relaxed. Yes, please. When he spoke to the main floor receptionist, he learned that Pam had no visitors that day. Rick was now facing two new dilemmas. Pam had been transferred to a regular room, which meant she was getting better, and Nina disappeared without a trace. This was bad. The more Rick thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. Actually, wait, Rick said, and entered Nina's passcode to get her phone again. He quickly navigated to her banking app and logged in. Once there, he saw that she had indeed booked a flight, and from the looks of it, she had booked a hotel room in Miami. Miami? Rick wrinkled his nose again. He contemplated going out there, but didn't want to jump the gun. Maybe it would be best to wait for Nina's contact before he made his next move. This sucks because now we have Pam is actually doing well enough to actually say what's happening to her, and her daughter is now gone. I'm pretty sure she don't have Jamaica's phone number. This is just too good. I had to plug in my phone so it don't die on y'all. Next scene. Pamela was slowly coming back to herself after enduring such a traumatic incident. She was moving and talking better, and the doctors had found no evidence of serious brain damage. She was a walking miracle, and their plans to discharge her in a day or two proved it. But now that Pamela seemed to be out of the woods, her mind was filled with a new worry. Nina hadn't come to see her today. Why hadn't she come? Pam wanted to call her daughter's cell phone, but she didn't have her number. Pam's cell phone was still at her apartment. Her eyes pulled as she thought about the mess that she would come home to. The stench of vomit was probably permeating her whole apartment, and it would take serious scrubbing to get cleaned up. Then another thought occurred to her. Did she want to go back to that place? The man who forced her to take the drugs had broken in easily. There was no sign of forced entry, according to the police, so he probably used a credit card or something or flimsy the door to get in. Then he left it unlocked for someone to find her dead. Pam swallowed, remembering that night, and then when she first woke up and police officers questioned her, her first thought was to tell them about what happened to her. But before she could get the words out of her mouth, the bored-looking officers launched into his own explanation of the events of that night, telling the story about how she tried to unalive herself over her daughter's rejection. Apparently, they had already spoken to Nina that morning when she found, and Nina has described their argument the day before. Pam was infuriated that the officer would jump to such conclusions without hearing all sides of the story. But that was the story of her life when it came to the police. Being a former addict. Go to the next page. Pam had run-ins with law enforcement before. They showed zero respect for her and took anything she said with a grain of salt because there was no way an addict could be truthful in their eyes. Plus, even if she did tell the truth that Rick had sent someone to drug her, she wouldn't be able to identify the man. Pam shook her head at the memories. She didn't need to focus on that. She needed to talk to Nina. But how? She thought for another moment, then an idea dawned on her. She pressed the red button for the nurse. A few moments later, the nurse entered her room. Yes, ma'am. I had a question. Did my daughter Nina Smith leave her cell phone number with the hospital by any chance? The nurse eyed her quizzical expression, even thought about it. Let me go check, she said. Pam waited on pins and needles for her to come back, and when she returned to the room with a small slip of paper in her hands, Pam's heart warmed with joy. Here you go, ma'am, she said. Thank you, honey. The nurse exited the room, and Pam immediately dialed her daughter's number. She could not wait to hear her voice, except the person who answered it wasn't Nina. It was Rick. Pam was so shocked to hear his voice that she slammed down the phone, her hands trembling afterwards. Vision of the night of her overdose flooded her mind, and she had to violently shake her head to make them go away. Why had Rick answered Nina's phone? Was he screening her calls? Where was Nina? Pam didn't know, but as soon as she left the hospital, she would find out. Chapter 16. I woke up the next morning with a slight headache from all the drinking I did with Corey, but other than that, I felt fine. The sunlight streamed through the partially closed blinds. I smiled, reminiscing about the night before, but when I sat up, a dizzy spell washed over me. I remained still until it passed, then swung my legs over the bed to stand up. Stretching, I yawned and made my bed back up, then headed for a shower. The plan was to freshen up, then head to the hotel's restaurant for breakfast. After that, I would let the sights and sounds of the resort take over and plan the rest of the day. Stepping into the shower, I immediately noticed it was built like the one in my house, except if I had 5 shower heads instead of 3. A twinge of jealousy rushed through me, but I also felt excited. Scanning the shampoo, conditioner, and body wash bottles that were on the rack provided by the hotel, I knew that it was about to be smelling good in here. I turned and reached out for where the shower knob should have been, but was surprised to see that there was no knobs. Instead, a digital pad was affixated to the wall with settings for temperatures and pressures for each of the 5 shower heads. OMG. This is incredible. My heart filled with giddiness, so I pressed the heat button for the shower head number 1. It went from the temperature that was already set, which was 100 degrees. At first, I was leery, but when I pressed the button, the system counted down for the 3 before the water turned on. It felt like it had gave me the opportunity to brace myself before spraying me with the water. When the water came out, it was a light pressure, but it wasn't scalding hot like I thought it would be. I increased the pressure and immediately felt like I was getting a massage. My eyes rolled back. Then I quickly turned on the second and the third shower heads to the same pressure and temperature. As the steam rose around me, I was in heaven. Turning on heads 4 and 5 were even better. Shower head 5 was also detachable, which I plan to take advantage of later. Once all the heads were going, I grabbed a washcloth and lathered up with a body wash. The scent of lavender and honey tickled my nostrils, and I couldn't wait to rub it all over my body. This resort was it. Even the shower was an experience. Once I finished in the bathroom, I wrapped myself in a huge towel and began the rest of my morning routine, brushing my teeth, fixing my hair, applying a generous amount of hotel provided lotion. It was smooth as it glided into my body, and I felt soft like a baby when I finished applying it. By the time I was fully dressed, I felt like I had just gone to the spa. I stood at the full-length mirror in my bedroom area to my suite to check my appearance, and one more time before grabbing my purse and walking towards my room door. As my hand touched the knob, I heard a light knock on my patio door. Turning around, I stared in bewilderment at a tall figure standing behind the blinds. I walked over, and it was Corey, balancing 2 cups of coffee and a huge brown paper bags in his hand. I gasped and slid open the door without thinking. Hey, I said, scanning him up and down. Corey was shirtless, exposing his immaculate-shaped 8-pack. He wore tie-dye blue swim trunks and black flip-flops, and with a wide-brimmed hat was hanging down his back from a string that crossed his neck and shoulders. In other words, he was smoking hot. This was the second time this man had me standing somewhere looking like a blundering fool, so I quickly recovered. Corey, I sputtered. He flashed me a winning smile. They said, I believe I promised you breakfast. My eyes widened. You cooked? He grinned. His grin widened. I did a little something. Completely taken aback, I let him in and was suddenly self-conscious. This tall, sexy, shirtless man was standing in my kitchenette, setting up the table like he owned the place. And here I was with a one-piece bathing suit on that barely flatter my figure with the cover up to match. My toes weren't even done. What the heck did he see in me? Corey looked back at me and I fixed my face into a smile. I'm so surprised, I said as he continued to fix our plates. From the looks of it, he prepared egg, cheese, and spinach omelets with sausage and on the side, bowls of fresh fruit, and of course, the coffee. Don't be, he said, then grinned again. His smile was to die for. Every woman deserves to have a sexy, shirtless man fix their breakfast at least once. They snapped me out of my stupor. Sexy, shirtless man, huh? My eyes narrowed in a joking manner. Quite full of yourself, aren't we? It's not cockiness, it's confidence, baby. Corey was too much, but I couldn't help admitting that it was fun to be around. He pulled out a chair for me and I sat. Then he sat across from me, bowing his head to say grace. That also caught me off guard, but I bowed my head too. It was a brief prayer, but when he finished, Corey had me wanting to visit my childhood church when I got back home. And probably some poison. We ate in silence for a few moments and I was enjoying the taste of the omelet, but when I started thinking about it, a guilty feeling crept in my heart. What was I doing eating and drinking with this random man while I had a whole fiance at home who I abandoned? I cleared my throat and Corey looked at me from his food. What made you do all this? I asked. Corey studied me for a moment. Those almond-shaped eyes caused me to have to look away for a second. I sensed that you needed it. I needed it? I repeated. Corey nodded, swallowing more of his omelet. I'm pretty good judge of character, Nina. I could tell you're a good woman who's been going through a lot of stress lately. My eyes filled with tears at the sincere way he was speaking, but I blinked back my emotions. And you caught all of that just from looking at me? He stared without blinking. Like I said, I'm good at reading people. The intensity of his gaze was almost too much. I suddenly felt insecure all over again. And what were you planning to do with the information you gathered about me, huh? My eyes narrowed into an accusing stare. Were you planning to seduce me out of my panties or something? I'm not a 304, Corey. He shook his head. No, nothing like that. I'm a nice guy, he chuckled. Probably why I finished last. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not trying to seduce you, though. I'm deeply attracted to you. I'm engaged, I blurted out, because I couldn't help myself. Corey stopped mid-bite, then nodded again. I could see the subtle disappointment in his eyes. I see. Lucky guy. Now that I had said it, I wished I hadn't because now things would probably be awkward. Corey had gone through all of this trouble to cook me breakfast and I had ruined it. But I didn't ask him to do that, I reminded myself. It was a sweet gesture, though I couldn't deny. I hoped that I hadn't hurt his feelings. We continued to eat in silence, but now that I had told Corey I was engaged, I felt like I needed to say more. Now that I owed him an explanation, but maybe talking to him, to a neutral person, would help me sort out my issues. Corey, he looked up at me again. He was just about to finish with his meal and was sipping on his coffee. What's up? My voice trailed off. A sense of indecision hit me now that I had opened my mouth. Why go into all of this with him? I just let this man down after he cooked me breakfast for God's sake. Why not just leave well enough alone? But I had already opened my big mouth. I had reason. I reasoned, might as well come out with it. Corey stared at me expectantly, so I told him what was going on. The reason I came to this place was because I have cancer. His eyes widened in shock. Cancer? I nodded, my neck tightening with the emotion. It's terminal. Corey seemed to be fighting back a look of alarm. He blinked, then grabbed my hand gently and gave it a compassionate squeeze. What kind of cancer? My eyes blurred, but I swallowed and swiped the tear away with the napkin. Swan syndrome. A look of confusion crossed his eyes in the mention of my disease, so I continued. You probably haven't heard of it. It's rare, and I'm one of the unlucky people who was diagnosed with it. Corey stared at me as if he was deeply processing everything that I had just said. Swan syndrome? He repeated. I nodded. It's all I have been able to think about lately, honestly. I thought getting away would help me take my mind off of it, but here we are. Nina. Corey's voice trailed off and indecision colored his features. What? I said, picking up on his apprehension. Why did he look so uneasy? As an oncologist, he obviously dealt with cancer patients every day. Why did he seem so unsettled by my news? When were you diagnosed? He asked as if choosing his words carefully. Like a month or two ago. I drew out. Why? Corey shook his head, and another look of uncertainty crossed his eyes. What is it? Tell me about your symptoms. He was confusing me with his questions. I began rattling them off. 'Cause it's so fake. Tell him about the dizzy spells, random bruises, weakness, muscle aches, and everything else that I had been going through. Corey shook his head again. Did you get a second opinion? A A second opinion? No, my fiance and doctor said that I shouldn't waste time. I needed treatment immediately with how advanced I was. Corey looked deeply concerned at my response. How long did the doctor say that you had left? 6 months. Corey didn't respond. Why are you asking me all these questions? Corey was silent at first. Then he said, because Nina, I didn't tell you this last night, but one of my other jobs is a medical researcher. I study new and rare forms of cancer as part of my position. In all of my years of doing this, I've never heard of Swan syndrome. His words hit me with an unexpected blow. My jaw dropped and my emotions went into a frenzy. But it's rare, I sputtered. Really rare. My doctor gave me a thick packet explaining everything about it, and there's a website too. I pulled out my tablet to show him the website. I had pored over every page when I first got diagnosed, agonizing over the fact that all the symptoms I faced were staring at me at the sight as I confirmed my impending fate. Corey carefully looked at the tablet for me and scanned it, his lips thinning and my eyes tightening the more he read. When he finished, he turned his tablet to me with trembling hands. Nina, he trailed off again. What is it, Corey? I let out a strangled tone. He stared at me as if piecing his words together. I don't know what's going on here, but something's not right. What do you mean something's not right? Corey grabbed my hand again. Look, I don't want to put you under any more stress than you're already under, but my gut tells me that something isn't right. I'm supposed to be off work this week, but I want you to come to the hospital I work at. I want to run some tests on you to confirm a few things. Confirm what things? Corey was scaring me the more he spoke. Nina, I don't want any easy way to say this. I don't want to come out and tell you what I'm really thinking, but I strongly suggest you come in and let me test you. And I want to do some more research on Swan syndrome in the meantime. See, it was meant for her to take this impromptu trip. Chapter 17. At this point, I didn't know up from down anymore. What did Corey mean something wasn't right? When I showed him the website, he didn't seem like he accepted the information that was on there. What was happening? Should I take him up on his offer to test me? A tiny part of me wanted to go through with it because I had originally wanted to get a second opinion, but Dr. Black and Rick said that it would take a long time to compare the tests, and it may have advanced in an incurable stage by the time they got the results. That was the only reason I went with their opinion. But now Corey was saying something different. When he left my room, I was dumbfounded. He said he would give me time and space to think, but he insisted that I come to his office for testing. I thought about it. Why would Corey go through all of his way, cutting his vacation short, just to help me if there was no solid reason for his suspicion? That scared me. Was there a chance that I didn't have cancer? I was afraid to ask the question because what if I went to his office and got the test done? They found out that I not only had Swan syndrome, but that I had progressed to an incurable stage. Wait a minute, Dr. Black said that I was terminal. Didn't terminal mean that I was already incurable? All this was confusing me. I was never good at biology as a kid, and I dang sure knew next to nothing about cancer except all the information I had learned on the website dedicated to Swan syndrome. Like, you mean they created a whole fake website and everything? But if I didn't have it, why were Dr. Black's tests showing that I was terminal stage? Why did he tell me I was dying? Why had I spent the last 2 months in a state of depression? All this new information was driving me crazy. It felt like my head was about to explode. Escaping from my room to the hotel lobby, I scanned the area and found what I was looking for. There was a convenience store that sold prepaid phones. I needed to talk to Rick. I paid for the phone, set it up, then went back to my room, grabbing Rick's number from the contact stored in my cloud on my tablet. I called him. Rick let out. Wait. The phone rang a few times before I answered. Hello? This is where the word diabolical is from. Diabolical. The phone rang a few times before he answered. Hello? Rick, I let out a strangled tone. Nina, Rick's voice was full of concern. What's going on? Where are you? I booked the hotel suite in Miami, I said, forcing myself to calm. A few seconds passed. You did? Why didn't you tell me before you left? I've been worried about you. I know, and I left you a note, but Rick cut me off. That was extremely irresponsible of you, Nina. He let out a frustrated tone. I immediately felt horrible for skipping out on him like that with barely any explanation. I started, but he cut in again. Dr. Black told me you skipped out on your appointment too. You need to come home. He wouldn't tell me what the results were, but he said it's urgent that he needs to speak with you. Chills ran down my spine at those words. If Dr. Black wouldn't tell Rick the results and he said he needed to speak with me urgently, it could only mean that he had more bad news. Nina, Rick was saying, are you hearing me? I think you need to stop whatever it is you're doing and book a flight home now. I have never felt so torn in my life. Rick was adamant about me coming home, while Corey, a man who I had just met, was bending over backwards for me to get a second opinion. Which option should I choose? Nina, Rick practically screamed in my ear. I hear you, Rick. I'm going to book a flight soon. Today, desperation laced in his tone. I paused. Why was he so adamant that I come home today? I mean, I got that I needed to go to the follow-up appointment, but with the information Corey just told me, I didn't know what to do. But my gut told me to hold off. Rick, I'll call you back. I want to reach out to let you know that I was okay. I'm coming out there. No, I blurted, much more forcibly than I intended. No, I said more softly. I'm fine. I'm booking a flight and I'll be home soon. Thank God, Rick said. We ended the call, and I went to the website where I booked my original flight. There was a flight back to Massachusetts in 4 hours. I hovered over the button to book it, but I couldn't do it. Ever since my conversation with Corey, my mind had been filled with questions. I might be putting myself at risk by taking the time I would need to get a second opinion, but if I was already dying anyway, would it matter? I turned off the prepaid phone and went to my mini living room to watch TV. I needed a distraction from the stress this morning brought. I binge watched a few shows, ordering room service for lunch and dinner. Part of me felt pathetic sitting inside of the suite watching TV when I could be outside enjoying the sunny weather, but the other side didn't want to be around people. I had ordered a bottle of wine along with my dinner, and at first I poured myself a glass, but soon I was drinking straight from the bottle. My life was moving too fast for me to catch up with, and I needed to escape. Once I finished the bottle, my brain was swimming around in my head, but I felt dang good. No more thoughts, no more worries, no more Rick, Dr. Black, or Corey. Just me and the giddy feeling that enveloped me until I passed out. Sometime later, I was awakened by a knock on my room door. I popped my head up. Huh? I looked at the clock and it was 11:15. Who was knocking at this time of night? Had Rick come to Miami? I shook away the silly thought. Even if Rick did come, he didn't know where I was located. The knock sounded again. Coming! I let out a groggy voice, then trudged over to the door, opened it to a wide-eyed and frantic-looking Corey. Corey? I asked. There was a sense of urgency in his eyes. Nina, I need to talk to you. I stared at him, still trying to gather my bearings. Then I stepped aside to let him in and closed the door behind him. Corey spotted my empty wine bottle on the kitchen table. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt your evening, but I think you should hear this. There was a sense of excitement mixed in with the urgent look that he was giving. I sat on the foot of my bed and he grabbed one of the chairs from my kitchenette and plopped it before me. Listen, he began after sitting in the chair. I know it's late at night, but I've been up all day since I left your room. I've been going between phone calls and researching on my laptop, pulling up every journal I could think of. I stared at him, waiting for him to continue. Nina, here's the thing. None of my colleagues have ever heard of Schwann syndrome. His words hit me like a blow to the chest. Corey continued. I even called my old advisor in med school, and he's more abreast of my research than me. He has never heard of it either. I looked at every journal over the past 3 years, and not one of them mentioned Swan syndrome. Extensive researches of internet databases also yield no results. Nina, the only website I could find that even mentioned the disease was the one you showed me. My mind was swimming again, but this time it wasn't from school. Corey, what are you telling me? Why did you do all this? He shook his head. I couldn't help it, Nina. It's one of my quirks. I've always been the type of person who couldn't settle when I had a questions, but no answer. I can't stop until I see things through and get to the bottom of the issues. Call me obsessive or crazy if you like, but I have a hunch that something's going on with that doctor you saw. Dr. Black? I fought to process all that Corey was telling me. Nina, there is no such thing as Swan syndrome. There it was. Corey was sitting before me with fire in his eyes, giving me a life jacket of hope, and I was afraid to grasp it. Corey, but if I don't have Swan syndrome, what do I have? I was falling apart internally, but Corey reached out to grab my hands. Come to my office in the morning and we'll find out together. Child, she ain't got nothing. 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 Chapter 18. I sat in the passenger seat of Corey's Lexus XC drove me to the streets of Miami to the hospital he worked at. Part of me was clinging to hope, while the other side felt like I was about to receive the final blow, that my life was over, that I was foolish to even entertain the thought that things could turn out otherwise. Corey didn't seem to share my fears. There was a look of determination in his eyes, like he was waiting for final confirmation of good news. This man had been more hope about my physical well-being than I did. That stung. Maybe it was because I spent the last 2 months visualizing my funeral, and lamenting over the fact that my life was about to be over before I had a chance to begin. I had won the lottery for $8 million, and once in a lifetime opportunity that I met the love of my life and fell head over heels, only to be diagnosed with a rare form of terminal cancer less than a year later. But now Corey was telling me there might be hope. I might be able to live the rest of my final days after all. Rest of my days after all. There was a chance I wasn't dying. Another thought occurred to me. If I wasn't dying, why was I sick? A sense of gloom and dread crept up with me. I may not have swannism, but what if that was a misdiagnosis? What if Corey's test shows that I have a different form of cancer, even more brutal than the one that I originally thought that I had? She has ain't got no sense. Ain't got no sense syndrome. I'm crying. Um, We pulled into the parking lot and Corey moved to get out, but I reached out and grabbed his arm. I don't think I can do this. He stared at me. What do you mean? I blinked. I mean, the tests are going to take a long time. What if they come back and it's too late for me? Corey's brow furrowed. Nina, the results are only going to take a couple of days. I dropped his arm like it had stung me. A couple of days? Corey stared at me in confusion. Yes, I'm going to run some blood tests and imaging scans, and a couple of and both of those should only take a couple of days, sometimes even sooner. We might have the results by tomorrow. My mouth dropped open. Tomorrow? Yes, why? Corey's eyes narrowed as if he just caught onto something. Did you not know that the test results came quickly? I shook my head. No. When Dr. Black originally tested me, he took 3 weeks to get the results, and he said a second opinion would take even longer. What? Corey blurted as he couldn't believe his ears. What the H was his name again? Dr. Black, Edgar Black, I said. Corey whipped out his phone and began firstly tapping the keys, then stopped. You know what? He faced me. Enough of this, Dr. Black, he spat, as if the man's name was poison on his tongue. Let's go in here and take some tests from Dr. Stevens. How about that? Corey and I entered the building, and I breathed a silent prayer and all of this wasn't for nothing. Next scene. The results of both types of tests came back the next day. I hadn't turned my prepaid phone back on, but I was sure Rick had been blowing me up since I hadn't returned home yesterday like I said. I turned it back on before heading to the hospital and saw a series of missed calls and unanswered texts from him. He was frantic and adamant about me coming home. I sent him a single text back. Got sick yesterday. Come home today. Then I turned the phone back off. Though it wasn't Rick's fault since he wasn't a doctor, I still felt some type of way about him too. He was the one who referred me to Dr. Black, saying that he was one of the best. If these results came back the way Corey thought that they did, I would have no choice but to believe that man was a fraud. I didn't know what I would do with that information, but I was going to take this situation one step at a time. Corey and I entered his office and they checked me in and sent me to the room while Corey was briefed of my results. When he came back and 10 minutes later with a look of accomplishment on his face, I knew all HE double hockey sticks was about to break loose. Good thing you're sitting down, he said, because you're not going to believe this crap. My heart dropped at the harshness of his tone. What is it? I don't have cancer? Corey shook his head, his hands trembling with rage, his eyes filled with angry tears, and he said, Nina, not only do you not have any form of cancer in your body, you're not even sick, at least not naturally. I gasped, what do you mean, not naturally? Corey slapped the folder full of papers down on the table beside him. Nina, I don't know who the H you've been associating with, but there are 10 different drugs in your system. My shock jerked me out of my seat. 10 different what? 10 different drugs. Corey repeated with disgust. Someone has been drugging you, which explains all the symptoms you have been experiencing. The dizzy spells, the muscle spasm, the bruises, all of it. Whoever did it was clever, though. They gave you just enough to make you sick, but not enough to make you overdose. This is horrible. Whoever the doctor is, they need to be thrown under the jail. I shook my head. There's no way Dr. Black drugged me. He didn't prescribe me any medications. Corey seemed like he was thrown for a loop. Then who drugged you? I shook my head again, but then my mind flooded with the answer. My entire body ran hot, cold, then numb. Nina. Corey was talking, but his voice was suddenly far away. All this time, the answer was right in front of me, but I didn't see it. My mom tried to warn me, so did Jamaica, but I didn't listen to either of them. I had fallen head over heels, and I was a woman on a mission, fighting to salvage a piece of my life by getting married. But why? Why would he do this to me? What reason could he have? Nina, Corey was saying. I snapped back into focus. Nina, who did this to you? Corey looked like he felt worse than I did. Rick, I said, but I still couldn't believe it. Shout out to everybody that's still up here, especially if you stay on the East Coast. Y'all probably ain't got to go to work in the morning either. Chapter 19. When I got back to my room with a clean bill of health, as soon as the cocktail of drugs eventually left my system, I was a woman on a mission. Corey had prescribed me some more drugs to help the other drugs clear out quicker, and thankfully he said the drugs Rick gave me wouldn't have any lasting effects once they were gone from my body. My mind was still spinning with what my fiance had done to me. One of my first thoughts was when and how did he have the time to drug me. Then the memories came flooding in. Rick cooked dinner most nights because I was always sick. He often gave me glasses of wine or tea depending on my mood when he got home. It made it painstakingly easy for him to take advantage of me. Corey's becoming my favorite. Gotta love those black and Dominican men. I speak from experience. Hello. But had he really done that to me, drugged me on purpose? Obviously, he had done it on purpose because how do you drug someone by accident? But why? Why would he do this to me? I loved him and I thought he loved me too. He told me he did. He even proposed to me. My emotions were spiraling and the anguish was all consuming, but I was determined to take a leaf from Corey's book and do some research. He want your money. Doom, doom, doom. Popping open the hotel provider laptop, I began searching for information on Dr. Edgar Black. That was the only part of this whole ordeal that made any level of sense. Obviously, he was crooked. I needed to find out more information about him. It didn't take long to locate him online because he had published in a couple of medical journals like Corey. I scanned the information about the accolades he received at the hospital I saw him at. Then I noticed something interesting. Dr. Black had previously worked at a different hospital in Pennsylvania. I looked up the hospital and first it didn't seem much different from the one in Massachusetts. Why did he leave Pennsylvania? He'd been in Massachusetts for 5 years, but he worked in Pennsylvania for 10 years. Why the seemingly random departure? Something told me there had to be a story, especially with what he did to me. Why would he go out of his way to diagnose me with a form of cancer that doesn't even exist? And not only that, but he also had me go through a round of chemo. I was mortified and sickened by the thought that he really made me go through all of that. But aside from being his patient, I didn't know the man from a brick in the wall. There had to be a story, pattern, something. I put my thinking cap on, then I got the idea to search the name of the hospital and the word cancer. A few news headlines popped up and their titles made my hair stand on edge. The first one was dated from 4 years ago, while the others were dated within the last 3 years. All the headlines were a variation of the same message. Doctors at local hospital convicted of malpractice. Oncologists enraged in money-making cancer schemes. Healthy patients forced through chemo. Some of them died. The list went on and on. I read every single article, each one more disgusting than the last. Apparently, a group of oncologists at the hospital Dr. Black worked at were involved with the scheme. They were receiving payoffs from companies that offer chemo treatments to diagnose patients with cancer and then take them through the treatments. 4 of them were convicted, and 3 were still awaiting sentences. Another doctor who was a whistleblower was the one who outed the team. I couldn't believe this. I looked at the dates, then thought about Dr. Black. The earliest article was dated 4 years ago, while Dr. Black had been in Massachusetts for 5 years. The coincidence was too strong. He had to have been involved in the scheme, somehow found out that there was a whistleblower in the group, and left before he got caught. But how could I prove it? I had my test results and proof that I had been drugged, but the drugging happened by Rick. They both worked at the same hospital, except Rick was a case manager. Had Dr. Black somehow forced Rick into his scheme? I didn't understand. Why do this to me? All of this was confusing, but one thing that I was not going to do was stop before I had answers. Chapter 20. Corey and I laid out a plan for when I got home. He urged me to take the information that I had to the police, but I wanted to confront Dr. Black to his face. I don't think that's a good idea, Nina, he said with a weary expression. I heard him and I understand his reasoning, but I was past the point of logic. Every fiber of my being was stewing. I wanted to wipe the floor with Dr. Black. I wanted to look him into the eyes and tell him what I found and hear what kind of sorry excuse for explanation he could have about what he'd done to me. He had resumed his scheme before. Was he being paid to lie to me? Tons of questions flooded my mind, and I would not stop until I knew the truth. F the police. I will call them later. No, Corey, I said. That man stole 2 months of my life from me that I can never get back. He convinced me that I had cancer, that I was dying. Of course, I'll get to the police involved, but first, I want him to answer to me. Corey didn't agree with me. I understand that. Trust me, I do. But what if this man is dangerous? He obviously is not an ethical or trustworthy person. I scoffed at his suggestion, though a tiny part of my mind agreed with him. I was too far gone to let him talk me down, though. He might be dangerous, but so am I. I'm going to take his butt down. Then the police can handle him. Corey tried another angle. Nina, that's not wise. He's a man and you're a woman. I opened my mouth to protest, but he continued. Besides, as a doctor, I have an oath to uphold in this too. I need to call the police. No, I yelled, desperation filling my tone. You can't do that to me. You can't take this from me. Not when I've already lost so much. Nina, that's not. I understand you have an oath, Corey, but this is my life we're talking about. A life he completely destroyed. You will never understand what I just endured. I need to confront him. Once I do, you're free to call every police station you want to. Just let me do this. Nina, he tried again, but my mind was already made up. Corey must have realized that his words weren't phasing me because he spoke his next words in a solemn tone. I understand why you want to confront him. I don't think it's a good idea, but I'm not going to stand in your way. Please just promise me you'll be careful. I will. I'm serious, Nina. I know we don't know each other, but I care for you. Those words stopped me. I faced Corey and saw the compassion and concern in his eyes. If we had met any other time at a different place in my life, I didn't have the time to think about that right now. Now it's time to take down these bees. I needed to confront Rick too, along with Dr. Black, but I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. I will handle them one at a time. Rick had hurted me deeply by his action, but in my heart of hearts, I held out hope that he was somehow being blackmailed into his decision. Dr. Black must have had some dirt on him or something to cause him to do what he did to me. It made perfect sense since they worked at the same hospital. That man was a real piece of work. I couldn't wait to lay into him. He would be lucky if I didn't destroy his whole office by the time that I was finished. On the flight home, I also thought of Jamaica and my mother. Both of them would be happy to hear the news too. When my flight landed, I sent each of them a brief text telling them that I had gone to Miami for a few days, but I was now back home and would be reaching out soon. I wondered if my mom was still in the hospital. Nah, girl, your mama did. I went to call but decided against it for now. I would see her soon anyway. When I got back to Massachusetts, I retrieved my car from the rental space. I parked it in the airport lot, then headed home. When I got there, everything inside my house looked exactly the same, but I had completely changed. I prepared a dinner of chicken, vegetables, and rice for me and Rick. I didn't plan to tell him everything I knew. I wanted to confront Dr. Black first, then let the chips fall where they may. Um, Rick pulled up at his usual time, and when he walked inside the door, he rushed into the kitchen to greet me without slipping off his shoes and setting down his briefcase like he usually did. Nina, OMG, I was so worried. He wrapped me in his arms and squeezed me tight, and I hugged him back, but my heart wasn't in it. It was like I was having an out-of-body experience and my real me was somewhere floating above us while the rest of me went through the motions with Rick. When he pulled back from the hug, Rick kissed my lips, and I felt the urge to curl my lips in disgust. How are you? He asked, assessing me with his eyes. I've been sick off and on, but I'm starting to feel a little better. Good, he nodded. Good. He continued to stare at me as if he was waiting for me to say something more. Dinner? I asked, turning away from him so that wouldn't show my true emotions to his face. I cooked for us. Great, he said, clapping his hands. Want me to go get some wine from the cabinet? I eyed him. No, that's fine. I drank a lot in Miami. I need a detox. Rick studied me for a second, then said across from me, I bet you did. Tell me about your trip. What made you go anyway? Now that I knew that he had been doing to me, I couldn't see Rick the same. He acted right and said the right words, but all that I felt for him was repulsion. I wanted to grab a butcher knife and stab him, or maybe even poison him back to let him know what it felt like. But I didn't. I did neither. I needed to see this through the way that I planned. We ate in silence for a few moments, and then Rick spoke again. You know, Dr. Black was seriously worried about you. He called every day you were gone, asking when you come back. Rick was landed on thick. It was sickening. I'd have been gone for what? 3 days? Please. Dr. Black didn't give a dang about me. He was concerned with tricking me into thinking I was dying. He did, huh? I said, trying to remain neutral, but it was difficult for me to do so with a straight face. Rick stopped eating as if he sensed my true emotion. Nina, are you okay? My eyes blurred with tears, but I fought to maintain my composure. I'm fine, Rick, just tired. You don't look fine. Do you need a massage? He said. His tone was so sweet, it was sickening. I slid from my seat since I no longer had an appetite. No, I'm good. I think I'm going to take a bath and lie down. Already? But you haven't finished dinner. Rick was grating my nerves with all this pretending like he cared about me. If you love me so much, why do you agree to drug me, Rick, huh? I started towards the room, but Nick blocked my path. Nina, talk to me. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I tried to go around him, but he blocked me again. I could tell when you're upset. Just spit it out. I said I'm fine. I tried again, but Rick blocked me again. He was getting under my skin. Nina, I'm here for you. Girl, she about to piss me off, ain't she? Whatever it is, we can't. Enough of the BS, okay? I thundered, causing Rick to jump from my forcefulness and my tone. Honey, what's wrong? He said, like he was taken aback. Venom laced my tone as I answered. Dr. Black is not who I thought he was. Confusion filled his eyes. What? I know what he's been doing, Rick. Silence fell between us. Nina, I don't know what you're. You don't have to pretend for me anymore. Rick, I know what he did, and he's going down for it. Nina, I'm going to bed. We'll talk in the morning, okay? And one more thing. You can sleep on the couch. Rick's jaw dropped open and his face reddened like he had been slapped. But I felt no sympathy for him. He stared at me for a second and then relented. Okay, go ahead. I won't bother you. Relief flooded my veins. I could not wait to be in my room and out of his face. He finally allowed me to walk past him. I wanted to say something more, but before I could turn back around, a sharp pain exploded on the back of my head. Then everything went black. Nina is making me want to pull my hair out. For real. Like you just don't know when to shut up. Like when you're supposed to shut up, you don't. Next scene, Rick stood over Nina's unconscious body, his breathing labored, clothing disheveled. He made the right call, questioning her until she blew her lid. But he knew she knew something, but he had to force it out of her. Thankfully, she told him what she knew, but Rick couldn't let her ruin the rest of his plan. I'm sorry, Nina, he said softly. I know you mean well, but I really wish you hadn't done that. Chapter 21. I slowly came to, but my surroundings were dark and muddy. A dull pain grew in the back of my head. At first, I wondered what caused it, but then I remembered the dinner, the conversation, Rick, and then everything went black. As I put two and two together, Rick emerged from the shadows, turning on a flashlight. I stared at him in bewilderment, then my eyes scanned the dark place I was in. From the looks of it, I was in some kind of cave. What the H is this? Rick shrugged, his smirk evident. A buddy of mine is trying to prepare for the end times. My vision grew blurry, but I blinked to focus. Why did you take me here? Why are you doing this? Rick's expression grew solemn. Nina, I didn't want it to turn out this way, but you left me no choice. What are you talking about? I struggled against the restraints on the chair I was tied to, but it was no use. My hands and feet were bound. I could barely move. Come on, don't do this. Whatever Dr. Black has on you, we can fix it. Once the police find out what he's been doing, Rick's chuckle of surprise caught me off guard. What Dr. Black has on me? He pointed at himself as he spoke. Then he twisted his lips in a mock Karen fashion. Oh, honey, you thought you had it all figured out, huh? Then his expression went stony and his eyes faded to black. It's the other way around, babe. Dr. Black didn't have crap on me. I was blackmailing him. I gasped. You were? Rick nodded as if eager to spill the beans. Why? How? Rick took a deep breath before launching into his elaborate story. Once upon a time, Edgar and I were colleagues. Colleagues? Rick continued as if I hadn't said anything. We worked together at the hospital in Pennsylvania. Both of us were esteemed oncologists, but then some members of our team were presented with a lucrative opportunity. He paused for dramatic effect. The cancer scheme, I finished, a bitter taste in my mouth. Ding, ding, ding. Anyway, things started off great and went smoothly for a while. Then all of a sudden, Edgar quit without notice. Naturally, I was curious about why he did such a thing, but I didn't have time to process it because I lost my medical license. Some stupid bee didn't know how to keep her mouth shut. I wasn't following. What are you? I got fired and lost my license for sleeping with a patient, he clarified. But good thing I did, Nina, because a year later, all hell broke loose at the hospital. The allegations. Right, right again. Our whole team got caught, ironically, the result of another bee who couldn't keep her mouth shut. Notice the pattern here? I was speechless as he continued. Anyways, I was down on my luck, so I came to Massachusetts, hoping that Edgar would put in a good word for me and help me get a job. He did neither. But you worked at the hospital, I struggled to understand. A dark look crossed his features. A effing case manager is nowhere near an oncologist. It was a tremendous pay cut. I was scrambling to make ends meet. My forehead wrinkled. From what Rick told me before, he was making like 80K a year. That was hardly a struggle, but I didn't dare bring that up now. Rick continued. I was desperate for options until one night I saw the news. Then I found you. His sudden jump in the storyline threw me for a loop. Huh? You were on the newspaper. You won the lottery for $8 million. All the air from my lungs evaporated. This whole time, I thought Rick had sincere motives but just got caught up. But now that he made the connection, I felt like the dang fool. And you should. You still the fool in the end. My entire relationship with Rick flashed before my eyes. I listened as he shared what he had done with the dating app, how he had targeted me and catfished me to manipulate me into falling for him. You're sick, I spat when he finished. All this to get your hands on my money? Newsflash, Rick, we're not married, which means that even if I die, you won't be entitled to any money. Rick's lips curved into a sinister grin. I actually thought about that, but thankfully, Nina, I found a solution. He whipped out a rolled up sheet of paper from his back pocket, from behind his back. He held it before me and allowed me to read it. Last will and testament. I wrinkled my nose and I looked up at him. This will never stand up in court. Oh, yes, it will. It has to be notarized, I countered. Plus, doesn't there need to be a witness? Rick mocked me as I spoke. Trust me, honey. I have all those parts covered. I happen to know a guy who knows a guy. I'll get the money. No worries about that. All you need to do is sign. No. There was no way I was signing that paper. No matter how long that he kept me down here, I'd die before I did that. Come on, Nina. You might as well sign it. I'm not doing it, Rick. He nodded. Figured you say that. Then he reached into one pocket and pulled out some gloves, slipping them on. What are you doing? Rick didn't answer. He disappeared into another room in the cave, then came back holding a needle. What is that? I cringed. Rick smiled. Just a little concoction I created. You know all about my concoctions, don't you, Nina? I didn't answer. Rick continued. This particular mixture contains a set of powerful chemicals. You'll feel their effects instantly, an excruciating pain like nothing you'll ever experience. The pain will only worsen as time progresses, along with convulsions. You'll bleed from every orifice in your body. Finally, you'll puke out your guts and die in a few hours. Any interest? He waved in the needle in front of my face. Or you could just sign the paper and just starve to death. The death will hurt too, but you might have more dignity. I starved at Rick, the needle and the paper. I stared at Rick. What do you say, Nina? Want to try my concoction? I'm interested to see how it all plays out. He was sick. I had no choice. How easy is it for people to still think that you're missing? But like the saving grace should be that she texted her mom and she texted Jamaica. But like even if they went to her house, how would they find her? We got 3 more chapters, y'all, in the epilogue. Chapter 22. Corey was worried. It had been 2 days since Nina made it home and he hadn't heard from her. She promised she would call. Why hadn't she reached back out? He contemplated the situation in his office for a few moments. Corey didn't want to pressure Nina since she was already under so much stress, but he wanted to make sure she was okay. He looked through her paperwork from the test she had taken and found her cell phone number. It was her regular phone, the one she said she left at home. Should he chance calling her? He didn't want to upset that Rick guy. Nina was convinced that he had been into drugging her, but Corey had other suspicions. If Rick was around, Corey didn't want to set him off. This? Yeah. Still, as the day wore on, Corey couldn't get Nina out of his mind. Screw it, he said, and called the number. It went straight to voicemail. If her phone was off, there was no way to contact her. Corey kicked himself for not getting the number to the prepaid phone she had purchased. He had given her his number and she said she would call, but was there another way to reach her? Corey thought for another second. What about her mother? Nina had mentioned that her mother was in the hospital recovering from a coma. The problem was Corey didn't know her name. Dang it. He pounded his desk in frustration. He couldn't just call the hospital and ask for the mother of Nina Smith. Wait, her mother? Corey's eyes widened. He went back to Nina's records. Relief washing through him when he saw that Nina's mother, Pamela Smith, was listed as her emergency contact. Thank God, he said, and dialed the number. A woman answered on the second ring. Hello? Hi, miss. Please speak with Pamela. This is Pam speaking, was her reluctant response. Hi, Pam. This is Corey. I'm calling about your daughter, Nina. We met in Miami. Did she tell you about that? No, she didn't. Pam sounded suspicious. What did you say your name was again? Nina texted me from a different number when she got back and said that she would call. I haven't heard from her. Who are you? Pam's words caused Corey to sit at attention. Not reaching out to him was one thing, but not reaching out to her mother after 2 whole days, something was wrong. Listen, Pam, I have something to tell you. Next scene. When she hung up the phone with Corey, Pam was ready to go at Rick, guns a-blazing. What had that bee done with her daughter? She knew her and Nina's relationship was strained, but there was no way Nina would make it a point to reach out when she got back, only to ghost her afterwards. Corey was right. Something was up, and Pam was going to get to the bottom of it. She stalked over to her car, then thought better of it. She needed backup. Walking over to her neighbor's door, she knocked. Her best friend, Earlene, came to the door, wiping sleep out of her eyes. Hey, girl, Pam said, can you take a ride with me? Now she about to get Earlene, and they about to ride at Medea and Bam style. Earlene stared at her in confusion. Take a ride with you? A ride with you where? I need to see about my daughter. I'm afraid that boyfriend of hers did something to her. Earlene gasped in shock. He did. Pam, you need to call the police. Earlene didn't know the whole story, but Pam had vented to her a few times about Rick's behavior, and Earlene had agreed that something was off about that man. Pam shook her head. I hear you, but I want to check him out first. Nina could be home, but if I just want to talk to him for myself. Earlene thought for a few moments. Well, if it was my daughter, I would want some help. Someone to help me too. But let me go get my little buddy first. Your little buddy? Pam wrinkled her nose. Earlene winked. Trust me, you'll like him. Pam waited a few moments and then Earlene reemerged from her home carrying her purse and locking her door. Pam, stared Earlene. Earlene faced her. What? You said something about a little buddy. Earlene smirked again and then held her purse open so Pam could see the contents. Inside was a shiny pink pistol. Pam's jaw dropped. Is that real? Earlene smirked deepened. We'll see if Mr. F. We'll see if Mr. Rick wants to F around and find out. Chapter 23. Corey didn't know why he always found himself in strange predicaments. Perhaps it was part of his nature. Whatever it was, he found himself on a plane to Massachusetts after taking a few days off work. He had to see about Nina. He didn't know the woman, and people would probably call him obsessive or delusional, but he needed to see this through. He had to make sure she was okay. If he showed up at her house and she was fine, he would leave, feel like a dang fool, and go back home. But if he didn't go and something happened to her, Corey wouldn't be able to live with himself if he could have helped her. When the plane landed, he took an Uber to a car rental company and grabbed the first car they offered him, then headed to Nina's house. He had gathered her address from the paperwork she had signed at the hospital. All he needed to do was see her and make sure she was okay. Then he would relax and go on about his life. Halfway to the destination, his Bluetooth lit up with a call from Nina's mother. Hello, he answered immediately. Corey, this is Pam. Hi, Pam. How are you? Not good. Corey pulled over sensing she was about to call him something serious. What's going on? I went by my daughter's house earlier today, but she wasn't there. Rick was. Corey tense. What did he say? He made up some story about Nina going out with friends, but it didn't sit right with me. I called Nina's best friend, Jamaica, and she told me she was waiting for a phone call from Nina just like I was. I'm getting a bad feeling. Corey. Have you called the police? He asked. Pam was silent for a second. I was going to, but second guessed it. I just went through a situation they didn't. I don't think that they would believe me. Pam's voice wavered as she spoke like she was about to cry. Corey wasn't quite following. Why don't you think that they would believe you? Silence was his reply. Corey sighed. I got a bad feeling too, Pam. I'm here in Massachusetts. Pam gasped. You are? Yes, Corey's ears grew hot with embarrassment, but there was no time to dwell on that now. I was worried about Nina because just like you, she was supposed to call me too. Pam was silent for another second. What do you think that we should do? She should have went to the police 24 hours after. Corey opened his mouth, but another female voice sounded over the line. I say we follow his butt. It sounded like another older woman, and from Pam's chuckle, it was probably a friend of hers. Shut up, Erling. Sorry, Corey, that's my girlfriend. She went with me to Rick's house, and now she's acting like a dang private investigator. Corey chuckled too, happy for the comic relief. Hey, I don't think that's such a bad idea. I'm down to follow him with you ladies. If he is up to something, maybe we can catch him in the act, and in the meantime, maybe I can convince you to talk to police, he reasoned. Pam agreed, and it was settled. She gave Corey her address so that they could develop a plan. At this point, he don't need to go back to he don't need to go back to Nina. She already signed. He gonna leave her in that cave. I'm trying to figure out how they gonna find her. If you're just joining, we're reading The Patient by Tanisha Stewart, and we're almost done, but the replay will be up if you want to listen to it at a later time. Chapter 24. Corey, Pam, and Erlene sat outside Nina's home on a steakhouse. Their plan was to keep watch to see if Rick left the house since Pam and Erlene had confronted him. When they got there, his car was still there, but Nina's wasn't. See, that's how I know she didn't go out with no dang friends, Pam said. The only friend she would hang out with is Jamaica, and Jamaica has kids. She wouldn't keep Nina out this late. Corey nodded, taking in the new piece of information. Think we should call the police now? Pam shook her head. No, I want to be absolutely sure he was lying first. Once I have full proof, I know that they have no choice but to believe me. Corey didn't agree with Pam's reasoning, but she was Nina's mother. He tried his best to respect her decision. Child, he should have enough for respecting people's decision. Like, didn't you respect Nina's decision, and look what she had now in a freaking cave? I'm on edge. Corey didn't. You said Jamaica was waiting on the phone call too, he asked. Pam nodded. She is just as worried as we are. She doesn't think Rick is a good guy either. Hold on. That was my gym partner. She just told me she wasn't going to the gym. I said, I'm not either. We go to the gym at 4:30. I would literally have to like get off live and then go straight to the gym. um, Pam nodded. She is just as worried as we are. She doesn't think Rick is a good guy either. Pam's words felt like a gut punch to Corey. He hoped that if Rick had done something to Nina, it wasn't too late to help her. Yes. Um, His fingers grazed his phone and he stared as if to beckon him to call 911, but he didn't do it. He hoped he wasn't making the worst decision of his life. Erling sat in the back, gripping her pistol. What are we doing? Corey thought. This is stupid. Suddenly, Rick emerged from the house and strolled to his car. Where's he going? Erling whispered. I don't know, Pam whispered back. Corey's hand was on his key, which was already stuck in the ignition. If Rick left, he was following him. Rick climbed into the passenger side of his Toyota SUV and eased out of the driveway before pulling off. Corey waited a few moments, then followed suit. Woo, Lord, Erling said from the back seat, sounding excited to be on a secret mission. Corey only hoped it wasn't a dummy mission and that Rick would lead them to Nina. After driving for half an hour, Rick finally made a turn onto a darkened road. Corey passed the road, then slowly circled back around, cutting his lights and driving slowly once he got on the road. He caught Nick's brakes light up ahead. Adrenaline began coursing through his veins as he considered where Rick might be going. They followed him for another 5 minutes through a few twists and turns and other windy roads. Thankfully, the GPS system on the car didn't conk out so that they knew where they were located. Finally, Rick stopped in the distance, and Corley stopped too, killing his engine. He turned to Pam. You two stay here. I'll text you if there are any issues. If you need to call the police, this is our location. He pointed to the GPS screen. Be careful, Pam said, and Corey exited the car, gently closing the door behind him as he followed Rick through the woods from a distance. Chapter 25. I don't know how long it has been since Rick trapped me inside this cave. I haven't eaten or drank in ages, and I know sooner or later I will starve to death, just like Rick said. When I die, will anyone ever discover me? Rick mentioned that this cave belonged to a friend of his, but did the man ever come down here? He certainly hadn't in all the time I have been tied to this chair. My back hurt. I can no longer feel my butt, and my arms and legs have to have lost all circulation by now. I shifted between short naps and bursts of adrenaline when I thought that I heard a sound. They were all false alarms. No one was coming to save me. I was stuck here till I died. What was worse, if I ever was discovered, there was a stroke chance Rick would get my money, especially since he forced me to sign that will. I had protested, saying that me starving to death would be a sign that someone did something to me, but Rick insisted that he would still eventually get the money. I'm a patient man, Nina. You should know that, he said. I tricked you all this time, didn't I? He is a piece of work. His words made me sick to my stomach, but I didn't respond. I hoped the agony of not knowing when I would die would be over soon. I was ravenously hungry and thirsty too. My stomach kept cramping up and swallowing felt more painful by the hour. Sooner or later, this would all end. A sound somewhere in the cave shook from my thoughts. I sat at attention, craning my ears to pick up what it was. Another false alarm? No, those were footsteps I heard, traveling towards me. Had Rick's friend come home? If he found me, would he help me? I opened my mouth to call out, but when Rick turned the corner, my words died in my throat. He was courteous enough to leave the flashlight for me, so I was able to immediately pick him out of the shadows, but his presence didn't bring me any comfort. What are you doing here? I let out, my voice hoarse from the lack of moisture. Rick smiled. I came to see you one last time, baby. My mouth grew drier at those words. What do you mean, one last time? He sighed as if he were frustrated with me. Exactly what I said. You've been here 2 days, which means you have about 2 more days before, maybe a week tops, before your body gives out on you and you die. Once you're gone, I'll take you out of here and leave you somewhere in plain sight. Maybe I'll even arrange for someone to find you to expedite the process. He glanced upward as if contemplating that option. How could you be so cold-hearted? I spit. All this for my money? You have your own money, Rick. You make over 80 grand a year. Yes, but you have a lot more money than me. With your millions, I'm set for life. A few good investments, and I'd be on my way. I didn't have words for the evil that was seeping through his pores. And then what? You live happily ever after? Don't you have a conscience? Rick chuckled. In case you haven't noticed, my moral compass veered left a long time ago. So what? You came back here to rub it in? He cocked his head. Kinda. Why? Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do for you to treat me this way? Rick paused as he considered my question. Nothing, actually, except stand in the way of me having millions. You're actually not that bad of a woman. Nina, cute in the face and even better in bed. Crap, if we weren't in this predicament, I'd probably date you again. I didn't even know why I asked him the question. I didn't want to talk to Rick anymore. Hopefully he finished getting his rocks off or whatever this was so that he could leave me alone. Just go away so that I can die in peace. I wailed him. Anyway, he said, as if reading my thoughts, I didn't really have much else to say to you. Thanks, I guess. See you on the other side. Rick turned to leave until Corey rounded the corner with a face full of rage. When I saw Corey's face, my heart leaped with relief, then trepidation. Rick, taken aback, what? He looked at me. I was just as shocked as he was. Who the H are you? Rick asked. Your worst effing nightmare, Corey said, and hooked off on him. Rick was thrown for a loop for a second, then he recovered, and he and Corey broke into an all-out brawl, knocking the flashlight over in the process. Their fists was moving so fast I couldn't tell who was winning. One of them accidentally kicked against the flashlight, and it spun around to reveal another dark figure. The light illuminated his face, and I almost pissed my pants when Dr. Black stepped forward holding a gun. OMG, I screamed. And Rick and Corey stepped apart from each other, both panting to catch their breath from their altercation. Rick's nose and mouth were busted and bloody, and Corey had a black eye. We all looked at Dr. Black. You stupid imbecile. He hurled at Rick, spit flying from his mouth. Dr. Black looked like a man at his wits' end from the crazed expression on his face. He spoke to Rick with such venomous tone. I told you from the beginning your plan would never work. All you did was make a big mess and force me to try to pick up the pieces. Veins were bulging from Dr. Black's neck. He was so upset. Edgar, Rick said in an uneasy tone. He held his hands up. Calm down. We can still win this. No, we can't. Are you hearing me, you idiot? It's over. Dr. Black cocked his gun and a chilly silence filled the air. Wait, what are you doing? Rick said when Dr. Black pointed the gun at him. Something I should have done a long time ago. No! Before Rick could say anything else, a single gunshot sounded and his head exploded from the impact of the bullet from Dr. Black's gun. Dr. Black turned to me with tears in his eyes. Nina, I'm so sorry. His expression was grave and my heart was beating in my ears. Dr. Black, you don't have to do this. Corey said, stepping forward. She's innocent. I swallowed as I fought for words to say to plead for my life too. If Dr. Black's mind was made up, however, there wouldn't be a thing. There wouldn't be a thing Corey or I could do about it. He was the one with the gun. Dr. Black shook his head at Corey's words. I'm not going to kill her. My plan was to get rid of Rick once and for all and to set her free. He told me what he'd done. My jaw dropped. He did? Dr. Black nodded. Nina, once again, I'm so sorry. I never would have done what I did to you if he hadn't blackmailed me. I know it's no excuse and I made my mistakes, but you have to believe me. I didn't want any of this to happen. Even though my fate might be sealed after tonight, I wanted to do right thing in all of this. He gestured to Corey. Go ahead and untie her. You two are free to leave. I was in total shock, but Corey scrambled over to untie me without another word. When he freed me from the ropes, he held me into a standing position. That was too easy for him, but am I wrong for cheering? No. I mean, it is good to say that, like, Dr. Black came back to save her. I mean, that she would have been saved. But he also let 2 days pass. I guess he probably was following him too. Hold on, we almost there. What are you going to do with him? Corey asked, eyeing Rick's body with an uneasy expression. Dr. Black shook his head. I'll get rid of him. No one will ever find him. As for me, he stared at me. Nina, I only hope that you have mercy on me. I moved to this state to start over and I find a new lease on life. I'd like to get back to that. I was taken off guard by his not so subtle request, but I didn't want to take too long to answer him because he was still holding the gun and could change his mind at any moment. I nodded and looked at Corey. He swallowed and nodded too. Your secret is safe with me, I said. For good measures, I wasn't sure if I meant it, but that man did to save my life. Corey helped me out of the cave and we were halfway to the car when we heard the sirens. Now your mama decides she want to call the cops. I guess she probably was like, he taking too long. Um, Corey and I looked at each other. Dang, he said, that must have been your mom and Erlene. What? I said. Then I saw the two dark figures racing towards us. Mom and her best friend Erlene reached us just as the police rounded the corner. Part of me was genuinely considering letting Dr. Black off the hook, but since the police had already arrived, it was too late. Dang, Gina. Epilogue. Life was a blur after that night. I was taken to the hospital to be assessed. Mom, Corey, and Erlene rode to the hospital behind the ambulance. Rick was delivered to the morgue while Dr. Black was taken in handcuffs. He must not have realized that Corey wasn't the only one in the rental car and when he followed Rick to my location. Part of me felt sorry for him, but the other part recognized that he deserved whatever punishment he was given. After what I went through 3 years of intensive therapy. I suffered from malnourishment and PTSD. I didn't know how I would ever trust again. My mom stood by my side as my rock, and so did Jamaica, and so did Corey, from a distance. He was still in Miami working at his hospital, but his job gave him an award for his courageous acts in saving me. My mom now lived at my house with me since I was afraid to live alone, and I couldn't deny that I enjoyed her company. When she told me about what Rick had done to her with the overdose, at first I couldn't believe it. Why didn't you say anything? I had said. She shook her head. Who was going to believe me, Nina? I was a former addict, and I didn't know the man who came into my house that night. The only reason I was able to guess that Rick was behind it was because he basically told me he was. He said something about a mutual friend of ours wanted to take me out, and then he mentioned you. When he said that, I knew Rick was behind it. I was furious when I heard the news. I called the police and told them all my mother had told me. When the police did their investigation, they followed a paper trail from documents Rick had locked in a filing cabinet in his office at the hospital and found the man who drugged my mother. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for his crime. Dr. Black was convicted and sentenced to 5 years for what he did to me, but he was sentenced to Pennsylvania to stand trial for his crimes there. A tragic incident occurred. He had been remanded to the federal prison there, and a family member of his prior victim shanked him in the shower. He didn't survive his injuries. He had been remanded to a federal prison there, and a family member of one of his prior victims shanked him in the shower. Next scene, 7 years since my rescue. Things had taken a turn for better in my life. I finally figured out what I wanted to do with my fortune. Standing in front of me was a brand new office building dedicated to serving a resource for men and women who were victims of medical malpractice. Cancer, the misdiagnosis were our top priorities, but we also help victims of other cases of malpractice. I was now CEO, and guess who was my director of research? Corey walked over and stood next to me, his almond shaped eyes twinkling in the sunlight. You did it, babe, he said, smiling down at me. I looked up in those eyes that always seemed to capture my soul. He lowered his head for a kiss, but before our lips could touch, a set of tiny hands came rushing between us, pushing us apart. Ew, get a room. Our 4-year-old daughter, Briasia, why her name gotta be Briasia? That's real black. Stood with her hands on her hips. Corey and I shared a laugh, then snuck a quick kiss before Corey scooped our daughter into his arms, causing squeals of delight. Mom and Erlene approached us next, smiles on their faces. Our ribbon cutting ceremony was scheduled for tomorrow, but Corey and I wanted to come take a look at the building before everyone else officially saw it. I stared at the building, amazed at what I had accomplished. With all the tragic events I endured in my life, I never thought my life would serve a greater purpose. But here I was, a woman healed and on a mission to help others who endured a similar pain to the one that I had gone through. Ironically, I had taken a leaf out of Rick's book and made some good investments, and now my millions had made several millions more. I was still wrapping my mind around my newfound sense of strength and confidence, but the more that I accepted it, the more that I realized it was in me all along. I just needed an opportunity to exercise it. Beaming at the building, I wiped a tear from the corner of my eye and looked at Corey and our daughter, and at Mom and Erlene. What do you guys think? Mom beamed at me. It's perfect, baby. I'm proud of you. The end. I hope you enjoyed you know how they be on Audible. I hope you enjoyed The Patient. At first glance, the story may seem a little far-fetched, but when you consider the case of Dr. Fried Fada and the horrific acts he committed in the state of Michigan, you will see that Nina's story is not that far from reality. Nina went through quite an ordeal, but I'm glad she found light at the end of the tunnel. What are your thoughts? I would love to hear from you. Share them in your review. If you like this book, please go give it a review on Amazon. It definitely helps the author out. Her name is Tanisha Stewart. The next book that we're going to read from hers is going to be The Bridesmaid, and we're going to start that tomorrow, but we're not going to read it in one night. That was good. Thanks for putting up. Thanks for being here. You pushed me. Y'all have a good night. If you made it to the replay, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. That was